What if I told you that the single most expensive habit you're nurturing right now isn't procrastination, laziness, or even fear? It's something far more insidious, something that wears the mask of virtue while it steals your future one responsible, moment at a time. Perfectionism isn't your superpower, it's your prison. And your brain built the bars itself. Every single day, you make hundreds of invisible decisions to wait. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't care, but because somewhere deep in your neural circuitry, you've convinced yourself that waiting equals wisdom, that preparation equals progress, that when the right time comes, you'll be ready. Here's the devastating truth that no motivational poster will ever tell you. The right time doesn't exist. It never has. And every minute you spend preparing for it is a minute you'll never get back, invested in a fantasy that was never real. Your brain is not your friend in this fight. It's your whispers convincing accomplice, baraz die diamond omul vazon. Emperor Kemal omul los. These aren't protective mechanisms. These are avoidance algorithms, sophisticated mental shortcuts that evolved to keep you safe from physical danger but are now repurposed to protect you from the emotional discomfort of trying and potentially failing. The problem. In the modern world, the cost of not trying isn't death. It's a life you never lived. Let me show you what's actually happening inside your head when you tell yourself you're being responsible by waiting. Because once you see the machinery, you can dismantle it. The dopamine deception. Why research feels like work. Your brain runs on a chemical reward system that's approximately 200,000 years as out of date. When our ancestors found a new water source or discovered which berries were safe to eat, their brains flooded with a feel-good chemical. Let's call it the motivation molecule. That reward reinforced the seek information, get a good feeling. It was a brilliant system for survival on the savannah. But today, that same system is being hijacked by an information economy designed to keep you in an eternal state of almost action. When you open another tab to research your business idea, when you listen to another podcast about productivity, when you read another article about the 10 things successful people do, your brain releases that same motivation molecule. It feels like progress. You're learning. You're preparing. You're being responsible. But here's the insidious part. The good feeling is completely disconnected from actual results. Your brain doesn't distinguish between information that leads to action and information that leads to more information. It just knows that learning historically led to survival. So each new piece of data feels like forward movement. But you're not moving forward. You're running on a treadmill that gets slightly faster with every step. And the only way off is to recognize that the feeling of progress is not progress. This is why research feels like work but produces nothing. You're getting the psychological reward without the real-world result. It's like eating sugar instead of food. You feel full for a moment, but you're actually starving. Let me give you a concrete example that might feel uncomfortably familiar. Sarah, a 32-year-old marketing manager, has been preparing to start her consulting business for 18 months. She has 47 bookmarked articles about how to find your niche, a 23-page business plan that's never been shown to anyone, a list of 50 potential clients she's researched, but never contacted, 3 different domain names she purchased but never built websites for. Sarah's brain is swimming in feel-good chemicals. Every article she reads feels like she's building her business. Every plan she refines feels like she's making progress, but her bank account is unchanged. Her freedom is unchanged. Her life is unchanged. She's not building a business. She's building a fantasy, and her brain is rewarding her for every brick she lays. The perfectionism lie works because it feels like quality control. But it's quantity control disguised as quality obsession. You're not trying to make your work perfect. You're trying to make your identity safe. And that distinction is everything. The identity protection, rackig. Why your self-concept is hostage, or your sense of self, who you believe you are, is the most carefully guarded asset your brain possesses. It's more protected than your physical safety, more defended than your deepest relationships. And for good reason. It is the for identity, your framework through which you interpret all of reality. If that framework crumbles, nothing makes sense. Here's where perfectionism becomes a protection rackety. Every time you contemplate taking action that might fail, your identity feels threatened, and your brain treats the threat the same way it treats a physical threat. It activates the same circuits. It releases the same stress hormones. It triggers the same avoidance behaviors. But if you believe you're a careful, methodical person, and you try something bold that fails publicly, that identity is shattered. If you see yourself as intelligent and capable, and you launch a project that nobody cares about, that self-concept is challenged. And it's so your brain, in its misguided attempt to protect you, keeps you in a state of permanent preparation. Because as long as you're preparing, you're not testing the identity. You're not risking the self-concept. you're safe. But this safety is a lie, or the most dangerous thing you can do to your identity is never test it, because identities that aren't tested don't grow. They calcify. They become prisons. And eventually, you mistake the prison for your home. Let me introduce you to what psychologists call identity elasticity. This is the degree to which your sense of self can stretch to accommodate new experiences, failures, and versions of yourself. People who act quickly and consistently have high elasticity. Their identity is like a rubber band. It can stretch to include person who failed at X without breaking. People who get stuck in perfectionism have low elasticity. Their identity is like glass. It shatters at the first sign of imperfection. At the tragic irony, every failure you avoid is a failure you experience by default. By not launching the business, you've failed at entrepreneurship. By not writing the book, you've failed at authorship. By not asking for the promotion, you've failed at career advancement. The perfectionist doesn't avoid failure. They preemptively accept it while telling themselves they're being responsible. This is why the language of perfectionism is so deceptive. But I'm not ready yet. Sounds like maturity. But translate it. I'm not willing to risk my current identity for a potentially better future identity. That's not maturity. It's identity conservatism. It's choosing the comfortable prison of who you are over the uncertain freedom of who you could become. The temporal collapse. How your brain makes every risk feel like death. Your brain has a design flaw. It cannot distinguish between immediate discomfort and long-term catastrophe. When you think about sending that risky email to a potential client, your fear center lights up the same way it would if you heard a lion's roar. The physical response is identical: elevated heart rate, stress hormones flooding your system, narrowed attention, urge to flee. Scientists call this time blindness, the inability of your emotional brain to process time accurately. Your rational brain knows that rejection is survivable. Your emotional brain experiences it as annihilation. And in that moment, the emotional brain always wins, unless you've trained it otherwise. This is why waiting feels safe. Every day you delay the uncomfortable action, your brain rewards you with relief. Good choice, it whispers. You avoided danger. But here's what your brain can't process: the danger isn't in the action. The danger is in the waiting. When every day of delay is a day of compound loss, opportunity cost, skill development, momentum, confidence. Your brain is protecting you from a paper tiger while standing in front of a freight train. Let me show you the math that your emotional brain refuses to calculate. Meet David, a software developer who's perfecting his app for 14 months. He tells himself he needs one more feature, one more round of testing, one more design polish. Let's run the numbers. If David launched today, 10% chance of a bug that needs a 2-week fix, but immediate user feedback and months of market learning. If David waits for perfect, 2% chance of a bug, lower, but not zero, but 14 months of zero learning, zero revenue, zero real-world validation. The smart choice is obvious. But David's brain doesn't see the 14 months of lost learning. It only sees the 8% reduction in bug probability. It collapses time and focuses on the immediate visible risk while ignoring the massive invisible cost of delay. Time blindness is the engine of perfectionism. It makes every decision feel weightier than it is. It makes every risk feel permanent. It makes failure feel like death. And the only way to break it is to expand your time horizon until the fear becomes irrelevant. The cognitive dissonance loop. Why more information makes you dumber. Here's a counterintuitive truth that will make you uncomfortable beyond a certain point. More information reduces decision quality. This isn't speculation. It's a well-documented phenomenon called analysis paralysis. And it's not about having too much data. It's about how your brain processes that data. When you have limited information, your brain uses shortcuts to make reasonable decisions quickly. These shortcuts are surprisingly accurate for most everyday situations. But when you flood your brain with excessive information, something strange happens. Your thinking system gets overwhelmed and your emotional system takes over. The result: you feel more uncertain despite having more data. Because now your brain has to reconcile conflicting information, weigh dozens of variables, and predict second and third order consequences. It's not designed for this complexity, so it defaults to the safest optioning: wait for more information. This creates a vicious cycle. The more you research, the more confused you become. The more confused you become, the more you feel you need to research. Each cycle makes you feel like you're getting closer to clarity, but you're actually spiraling away from action. This is why research feels like work, but produces nothing. You're getting the psychological reward without the real-world result. It's like eating sugar instead of food. You feel full for a moment, but you're actually starving. Let me give you a brutal example from the world of emergency medicine. Researchers found that who had access to less information in high-pressure situations made better decisions. Why? NIR, because they relied on pattern recognition and intuition, the brain's natural decision-making systems, rather than trying to process more data than humanly possible in the time available. The same principle applies to your business idea, your creative project, your career move. Their 10th article about how to start isn't giving you new information. It's giving you the illusion of progress while diluting your ability to act. The comparison paralysis, why role models are killing your momentum. We live in the golden age of comparison. You can open Instagram and see someone younger than you with a more successful business. You can watch a YouTube video of an author who wrote their book in 30 days, but you can read about the entrepreneur who sold their company Dolly for $100 million before age 25. This feels motivating. It feels like you're gathering inspiration, but here's what's actually happening. You're calibrating your expectations to outliers while comparing their finished products to your messy process. Your brain doesn't see the 10 years of failure behind the overnight success. It doesn't see the 50 failed attempts before the viral video. Well, it sees the polished, final product and assumes that's the standard you must meet before you start. So you wait. You prepare. Get ready. Meanwhile, the person you're comparing yourself to started messy, failed publicly, and improved through iteration. This is called survivorship bias meets social comparison. You're only seeing the winners, and you're comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. The result is perfectionism by proxy. I can't start until I can produce work that good. Starving. But here's what the data actually shows. The people who succeed aren't the ones who wait until they can match the best. They're the ones who start when they're embarrassingly bad and improve faster because they're in motion. Why are the information addiction cycle? Why learning is the ultimate avoidance? Let me introduce you to the most socially acceptable addiction of our time: information consumption disguised as self-improvement. It's the reason 3 you can spend hours reading about productivity and feel productive while doing absolutely nothing. Your brain's reward system doesn't distinguish between consumption and creation. When you read about someone else's success, your brain mirrors the satisfaction of success itself. You get a hit of the same feel-good chemicals you'd get from actual accomplishment. This is called vicarious reward, and it's the reason why binge-watching entrepreneurial content feels like building a business. But it's not. It's entertainment masquerading as education. And it's the most dangerous form of procrastination because it feels so virtuous. You can tell your friends, "I'm working on my business," when you're actually just consuming content about other people's businesses. You can tell yourself, "I'm preparing," when you're actually just avoiding the emotional discomfort of creating. Epilepsy cycle works like this. You feel anxiety about starting, open YouTube to learn. You get dopamine hit that reduces anxiety. You associate learning with progress. You feel better with having done anything. The cycle repeats. After 6 months of this, you have 200 hours of research and 0 results. You feel like an expert on starting, but you've never actually started. You're a theoretical practitioner. Someone who knows everything about doing and nothing about done. They practical pathwiring your brain imperfect action enough diagnosis. Let's build the solution, because understanding the problem is 10% of the work. The other 90% is deliberate, systematic practice that rewires your neural pathways until action becomes your default setting. Phase grow commitments and bed and Betty stretch 1. Days 21. Your first task isn't to launch a business or write a book. It's to build the muscle of starting before you feel ready. This starts with micro commitments so small they feel ridiculous. But a 5-minute rule for the next 21 days. Spend exactly 5 minutes on a task you've been avoiding, not more. The goal isn't progress. It's action initiation. You're training your brain that starting doesn't require perfect conditions, complete information, or emotional readiness. If it just requires a clock and 300 seconds, 5 minutes, you must resist the urge to make the most of it. Don't optimize, don't plan. Just execute. If you're avoiding writing, write 1 terrible sentence. If you're avoiding launching, create 1 ugly landing page. If you're avoiding a difficult conversation, write 1 awkward email draft. The magic isn't in what you produce. It's in the neurochemical shift that occurs when you prove to your brain that action doesn't require perfection. Each 5-minute session is a vote for a new identity. I'm someone who starts before I'm ready. Here's what will happen in your brain the first day. Your fear center will scream at you. This is stupid. You need more time. This won't be good enough. By day 7, the volume will decrease. But by day 14, you'll notice something starting feels less uncomfortable. By day 21, you'll catch yourself starting automatically on other tasks. The neural pathway is being built. Phase 2, the 70% deck B on protocol days 20-35. Once you've built the action initiation muscle, it's time to attack perfectionism at its sourcing decision-making. For the next 2 weeks, you're forbidden from waiting for 100% certainty on any decision that can be reversed. The protocol is Simplug 1, and identify the key variables you need to make a decision. 2. When you have 70% of them, decide. 3. Create a course correction, plan for if you're wrong. 4. Execute. This forces your brain to confront its fear of imperfection directly. You'll discover something. Being 70% right and adapting is more valuable than being 100% right too late. Here's why this works. Most decisions in life are reversible. The cost of being wrong is usually much lower than the cost of waiting. When you commit to deciding at 70%, you short-circuit the perfectionism loop that says, just a little more information. Let me give you a concrete example. Michael, a graphic designer, used this protocol to quit his job, but he identified his key variables: savings runway, client pipeline, skill level, market demand. When he hit 70% confidence, 6-month savings, 3 potential clients, proven skills, clear market need, he gave notice. He didn't wait for 12-month savings and 10 guaranteed clients. He acted at 70%, but within 3 months, he discovered his skills were actually stronger than he thought. 30% uncertainty was pessimism. He landed 7 clients. His old identity as employee was replaced with business owner. If he had waited for 100% certainty, he'd still be in his cubicle today, preparing. Olbol 3G the Beck-Compel Mampelbar days 3649. Perfectionism thrives in secrecy. It dies in public. Starting on 36, you will commit to 1 public action per week. Something that can be seen, measured, and potentially criticized by others. This isn't about seeking validation. It's about eliminating the option to hide. When you know someone might see your imperfect work, your brain's perfectionism circuits go into overdrive. This is where you train them to shut up. The progression looks like this. Week 1, share 1 imperfect piece of work with 1 trusted friend. Week 2, post 1 in progress project on social media. Week 3, launch something that's good enough to a small audience. Week 40, commit to a public deadline that forces completion over perfection. Each step increases the social risk while building your tolerance for imperfection. And by day 49, your identity has stretched to include someone who ships imperfect work. The Sakbal Debemens Vuno, how our culture reinforce perfectionism. The perfectionism epidemic isn't just personal, it's cultural. We live in a society that celebrates flawless Instagram feeds, carefully curated LinkedIn profiles, and highlight real success stories. We've created a world where vulnerability is broadcast but failure is hidden, where everyone pretends they had it figured out from day one. This creates a comparison trap that makes your messy process feel abnormal. You see someone's polished final product and assume they started that way. You don't see their terrible first draft, their fail first launch, their rejected first proposal. So you conclude your messy beginning is evidence that you're not ready, while it's actually evidence that you're exactly where you need to be. The social media age has weaponized perfectionism. Every platform rewards polished presentation over authentic process. Your every algorithm amplifies success stories while burying struggle. We're drowning in other people's finished products while starving for visible examples of messy, imperfect progress. This is why finding accountability partners or mastermind groups can be counterproductive, but often these groups become chambers for perfectionism. Members share their progress, which is often just more research and planning, and receive validation for their continued preparation. Thorough, they say. Your plan looks amazing! They comment. And the perfectionism loop strengthens. The solution: find action partners, not accountability partners. People who will ask you not, what have you learned? What have you done? People who celebrate imperfect action over perfect planning. People who share their failures as proudly as their successes. The fam balai factoro. When perfectionism BS been inherited for many people, perfectionism isn't just a personal habit, it's a family heirloom, where if you grew up in a household where mistakes were punished, performance was love, where good enough was never good enough, your brain learned early that imperfection equals danger. These early experiences literally wire your brain's threat detection system to treat mistakes as survival threats. A parent who says, "I'm disappointed," just hurt your feelings. To a child's brain, it registers as abandonment, as loss of belonging, as potential exclusion from the tribal, and the tribe is survival. So you learned being perfect is safer than being authentic. But being prepared is safer than being visible. Waiting is safer than trying. But you're not a child anymore. And the tribe that matters isn't your family of origin, it's the future you want to create. The work is to recognize that your brain's threat detection system is miscalibrated. An imperfection won't get you abandoned. A mistake now won't cost you belonging. In fact, the fastest way to find your real tribe is to show your real self, imperfections and all. Let me share a story that illustrates this perfectly. Bahunda Linda, a 45-year-old lawyer, spent 15 years in a prestigious firm, never making partner because she was still preparing her case for partnership. Her father, also a lawyer, had been notoriously critical. Nothing was ever good enough. Linda internalized this and created a life where she was always preparing but never arriving. When we worked 49 through the 49-day protocol, the hardest part wasn't the actions themselves, it was the grief. Linda had to grieve the father who couldn't celebrate her efforts, the childhood where mistakes were treated as character flaws, and the 15 years she spent chasing an approval that was never coming. Once she processed that grief, the actions became easy. She launched her own practice within 6 months, and she built it imperfectly, client by client, and she found a tribe of clients and colleagues who valued her competence and her humanity. The ultimate truth, perfectionism, B is freedom aversion. After working with thousands of perfectionists, I've discovered the ultimate truth that nobody wants to hear. Perfectionism isn't about high standards. It's about freedom aversion. A freedom is terrifying. Freedom means responsibility, and a freedom means no one to blame. Freedom means your life is entirely your creation, the good, the bad, the mediocre. For many people, it's easier to live in the comfortable prison of preparing than to face the terrifying freedom of doing. When you wait for perfect, you get to tell yourself a story. I could have been successful, but I wasn't ready. It's a safe story. It protects you from the much scarier story. I tried, I failed, and that means I'm not as capable as I thought. But here's what you need to understand. The second story is the only one that leads anywhere. The first story keeps you safe but stuck. The second story is uncomfortable but dynamic. It's the story of everyone who has ever built anything meaningful. On the 49-day protocol isn't just a set of tactics, and it's a freedom training program. Each micro-action is a vote for freedom over safety. Each 70% decision is a vote for responsibility over excuses. Each public commit is a vote for authenticity over image. But the implementat bar on Blumento, your 49-day freedom journey, let me make this concrete and actionable. Well, here's exact 49 next. 1 bring 1'll do 31 days to rewire week action on base 2 ways to rewire rain daily and start up. A set up minute timer for exactly 5 minutes. Pick minutes, pick only task you've been avoiding, work on it with zero expectation of quality. Stop when the timer rings. Identity stretching, exercising each week. Share one imperfect piece of work with one person. No context, no apologies. Just here's what I've been working on. Line 45, week 45 feet, ban elaborating. IS 2 days, 3-5 rule. We've been postponing UL week plus 10 pieces of the think you need information you to deciding when you have 7 of them. Create your if I'm wrong. Recovery plan, decide and act within 24 hours. Fear translation practice. Every time you think I need more time. Write down what specific outcome am I afraid of? What's the actual likelihood 1-1-10? What's my recovery if it happens? Your week 6 36-79 pullback freedom day 6 exposure therapy weekly 6 segres post 1 work in progress on social media week 70 son. Good enough. Project to a client at week 80 commit to 1 public deadline you can't undo. The goal isn't to succeed publicly. It's to survive imperfection publicly. But at a great exposure proves to your brain that social judgment isn't fatal. The measurement of success in redefining progress. During these 49 days, you will not measure success by outcome. You will measure success by action taken despite discomfort. Your metrics are number of 5-minute sessions completed 21, number of 70 decisions made 5, target 5, number of public exposures, target 4, a number of days you chose action over research, target 40 spots. That if you hit these targets, you have succeeded. Period. The external results are irrelevant result because you've accomplished something far more valuable. You've rewired your brain. The Popo bent of no returning, how to know you're free. You'll know the protocol is working when you catch yourself taking action before you even notice the fear. Long have you when someone asks, how long you been thinking about this? And you realize you just did it without thinking. When you launch something with a typo and sleep peacefully, this is the action reflex. It's what athletes call muscle memory. But for decision making, a yarn has lure brain that starting is safe, that imperfect is viable, that momentum beats preparation. And once you have it, you can't unlearn it. It's yours forever. What if I told you that every billionaire entrepreneur, every creative genius, every's built something extraordinary shares a single mental habit you can steal in the next 10 minutes? They don't have more information than you. They don't have better resources. They don't possess some magical ability to see the future. They simply have a different decision threshold, one that transforms uncertainty from a paralyzing threat into a competitive weapon. It's called the 70% rule. And it might be the most valuable concept you'll ever learn. But before I explain it, let me show you what your life looks like without it. Meet James. James is 38 years old. He's been thinking about starting a consulting business for 4 years. He has a master's degree, 15 years of corporate experience, and a network of potential clients. Woody's also $40,000 in debt, working a job he despises and watching his dreams grow dimmer every year. Last Tuesday, James had a conversation that changed nothing. A former colleague offered him a project. $15,000 for 3 months of work. Perfect for transitioning out of his corporate prison. James said, "This sounds amazing. Let me think about it and get back to you." That was Tuesday. Today is Sunday. James has spent 18 hours researching how to structure consulting contracts, 12 hours analyzing whether his pricing is right, and 8 hours creating a 7-page comparison of pros and cons. He's no closer to saying yes, but he'll probably spend another week thinking about it, by which time his colleague will have found someone else. James doesn't have a business problem. He doesn't have a skills problem. James has a decision threshold problem. He's waiting for 100% certainty in a world that rewards 70% confidence. Aber, the colleague who took that project. She's 29, she has less experience than James, fewer credentials, and more uncertainty. But she has one thing James doesn't: the ability to decide at 70% and course correct on the fly. While James prepares for a perfect launch that will never arrive, she's landing her third client, learning more in 6 months than James has in 4 years, and building momentum that compounds weekly. This is the 70% rule in action. It's not about being reckless, but it's about calculating that the cost of waiting for perfect information exceeds the cost of being slightly wrong and adjusting. Let me break down the math your emotional brain refuses to do. The H-Bedden calculus: why your brain sucks at probability. Your brain evolved for a world where decisions were simple and immediate: eat this berry or not, approach this stranger or not, run from this sound or not. In that world, waiting for more information often meant survival. The person who waited to see if the rustling was a tiger lived longer than the person who assumed it was the wind. But that same brain dropped into our world of complex, long-term decisions is like a calculator trying to run a spaceship. It uses the wrong formulas for the wrong problems. Your brain hears what your brain does with a decision like James's consulting project in one. It exaggerates downside risk. Your brain's fear center treats potential client says no as a survival threat. It triggers the same physiological response as a potential predator nearby. This is called risk miscalibration, and it's why financial losses feel twice as painful as equivalent gains feel good. 2. It ignores opportunity cost. Your brain can see the potential lost $15,000 if the project fails. Liter 100 cannot see the thalers in future projects James loses by never starting. This is called opportunity blindness, the inability to factor in the cost of inaction. 3. It demands certainty in an uncertain world. Your brain wants to know the future. It wants guarantees. It wants to eliminate all doubt. But in complex domains like bishoprics and creative work, certainty is mathematically impossible. Demanding it is like demanding a weather forecast that's accurate to the minute 30 days from now, and waiting it's not going to happen, and waiting for it is pure madness. The 70% rule corrects these miscalculations by forcing a simple cost-benefit analysis your emotional brain can't do on its own. The Jeff Bezos moment: how Amazon was built on 70% decisions. In 1994, Jeff Bezos was a senior vice president at a hedge fund in New York. He saw the internet growing at 230% per year and had an idea to sell books online. He didn't have a proven business model, any experience in retail, a reliable way to ship books, a website. They barely existed. Customer data, investor confidence. He had about 30% clarity. Maybe 40% on a good day. Ask what your butt. Here's what he also had: the ability to calculate that waiting for 100% clarity would mean missing the window entirely. The Bezos used what he later called a regret minimization framework, which is just a sophisticated version of the 70% rule. Imagine himself at 80 years old and asked, "I regret trying this and failing. Or will I regret not trying when I had the chance?" The answer was obvious. He quit his high-paying job, moved to Seattle, and started Amazon in his garage. He didn't wait for perfect information about the market. He didn't wait for an e-commerce playbook. He didn't wait until online payment systems were reliable. They weren't. He acted at 70% and figured out the 30% through trial and error. Here's the crucial part: the 30% he didn't know contained both the problems and the opportunities. Unreliable suppliers, unreliable clunky payment systems, skeptical customers were real. But the opportunities, first mover advantage, massive media attention, rapid customer feedback loops, were only accessible to someone who acted before the path was clear. To wait: if Bezos had for 100% certainty, Amazon would have launched it in 1994. It would have been one of hundreds of online retailers, not the pioneer. It would have been competing with established players, not defining the category. That 5-year delay would have been the difference between building an empire and building a small business. This is the hidden power of the 70% rule. The uncertainty you fear contains the opportunity you seek. While less still an app by waiting for certainty, you're not just delaying, aiding the very conditions that make exceptional success possible. The Warren Buffett paradox: when 70% looks like 100%. Warren Buffett is famous for saying, "I only invest in things I understand completely." It sounds like he waits for 100% certainty. But here's what he actually means. He defines his 70% differently. A Buffett 70% isn't about knowing everything about a business. It's about understanding the core drivers that determine 80% of the outcome. Only he wants to know, Gregor, does this business have a durable competitive advantage? Yes or no, maybe. Is the management trustworthy and competent? Yes or no, maybe. Is the price reasonable relative to long-term value? Or April dung yes or no, maybe. He doesn't need to know what next quarter earnings will be, exactly how macroeconomic trends will affect the business, whether the stock price will drop 20% next month. He knows that the first 3 questions determine long-term success. The last 3 are noise, so he makes decisions when he has 70% clarity on the first 3, regardless of the uncertainty on the last 3. This is the second layer of the 70% rule. Not all uncertainty is equal. Some variables determine outcomes. Others are just details. Strategic the thinkerify the 30% that matters and act when they have clarity on that. The rest is figured out in motion. When Buffett bought Apple stock, he didn't know how the iPhone 12 would sell, but he didn't understand all the technical specifications. He didn't predict the trade war with China. But he understood that Apple's ecosystem created customer loyalty, durable advantage, that Tim Cook was a proven operator, trustworthy management, and that the price was reasonable for the cash flows. That was his 70%. The rest, he'd figured out or it wouldn't matter. This is why most people misinterpret Buffett. They think he waits for certainty. He doesn't. He waits for clarity on the variables that drive 80% of results, then accepts the uncertainty on the 20% of details, where that's 70% thinking masquerading as 100% thinking. The real mathing expected value vs emotional value. Let's do the math James should have done when offered $15,000 project. But let's do it with the actual variables his brain was ignoring. It's like full cool $15, 20 again persected value James says $, chance in my fifth gallery of percent but to 20% chance modern fringe its value of project expecting. Learns hardable expected value and since cover 1,000 learning dollars and percent 10%, James loses some referen with one colleague, learns what doesn't learns, work ex-infected value negative value net of first value reputations value of reputation and failure double failure data, weighted expected rejected expected one, massive value reject expected vols and value of project expected but failure of the massively positive even if the worst case happens. One if James says NO or 100% chancing, no money, no learning, no clarentum, a continued drain from his hated job, growing self-doubt, opportunity cost of not trying expected value pure loss, compounding daily, when you calculate actual expected value, acting at 70% is a no-brainer, but your brain doesn't calculate expected value. It calculates emotional value. And the emotional value avoiding fear today feels more tangible than the statistical value of future success. This is why you need a decision framework that overrides emotional calculation with mathematical reality. Or the 70% rule is that framework, the practical framework, how to apply the 70% rule to any decision. Enough theory. Let's get tactical. Here's the exact process for applying the 70% rule to any significant decision. Step 10, define your decision variables for any decision. There are probably 10 key variables that determine success. Write them down. Be specific, but not market conditions. But do I have at least 3 potential client budget and need? I'm ready. But do I have the core skills required to deliver, even if I have to learn some details on the job? Step 2, assign confidence scores for each variable. Assign a 0-100% confidence score. Not based on how you feel, but based on actual evidence. I have 90% confidence I can deliver this service because I've done similar work for 10 years. I have 60% confidence there's market demand because 2 potential clients said they're interested. Whilst 3, calculate your average, add up your confidence scores and divide by the number of variables. When your average confidence hits 70%, you're cleared for action, not 100%, not 90%, 70%. If aren't a step 40, you're create if I'm wrong, plan. You for each variable where your confidence is below 100%, write down what you'll do if you're wrong. If I can't deliver this technical component, I'll outsource it to a contractor. If the market demand is lower than expected, I'll pivot to a related service. 1. This isn't planning to fail, it's planning for all outcomes, which makes the unknown less threatening. Step 5, set a decision deadline. Give yourself a maximum research time. When the deadline hits, decide based on your current 70% assessment. No extensions. No. Just one more article. Deciding at percent on time is better than deciding 80% late. Step 6, act and document. Make the decision. Take action. Document what happens. This creates data for your next 70 decision. Step 7, review and recalibrate after the outcome is known. Review your confidence assessments. Were you overconfident? Calibrate for next time. This is how you improve at 70% decision making. Let me show you how this works in practice. Case studying Maria's career pivot. Maria is a 41-year-old teacher who wants to become a corporate trainer. She's been thinking about it for 2 years. Here's her 70% of analysis variables ones. Do I have relevant skills? 95% are 15 years teaching curriculum design. Presentation skills 2 is their market demand. And 65% of 3 companies said they'd hire trainers, but market research shows mixed signals. 3. Can I handle the financial transition? 80% into 6 months savings. Spouse has stable income. 4. Do I have a network in corporate world? 60% LinkedIn connections, but no deep relationships. 5. Can I handle rejection and uncertainty? 50% history risk averse, but highly motivated. Average confidence 68%. Close enough. Maria decides to act. What you're keeping time, Team Tom. Landing market, training, net worth, and our speeching. To help with business fishing development, can't handle uncertainty, join a mastermind group of transitioning professionals. Decision deadlining 48 hours. Actionong. Maria sends LinkedIn messages to her 3 warmest corporate contacts, offering a free training session. Of outcome, one company says yes. Maria delivers. They hire for a paid session. Within 6 months, she's making 80% of her teaching salary with 20% of the hours. She never hit 100% confidence. She didn't need to. The 70% rule and relate on BPS is why perfect matches are a myth. Rule. The 70% apply to business. It might be even more valuable in personal relationships where perfectionism destroys more opportunities than anywhere else. I think about dating. Many people have a mental checklist of 20 plus must-haves for a partner. Who's someone they wait for scores 100 across all categories. This is mathematically insane. A person who scores 100% on your 20-item checklist is also attracted to you, is available, and lives within dating distance has a probability approaching 0. The 70% rule for relationships says, find someone who scores 70% on your core 35 values and commit to building the rest together. Not settle for 70%. Not lower your standards. But recognize that the perfect partner is a co-creation, not a discovery. Who am I? Friend Sarah, who met her husband at 35 after waiting for the right one, told me, stopped looking who checked every box and started looking for someone who shared my 2 non-negotiable values, intellectual curiosity and emotional honesty. He was 70% of my list. We've built the other 30% together over 8 years. The 70% was the foundation. The 30% is the custom architecture we designed. This applies to friendships too. Stop waiting for perfect friend who always understands you, always has time, never disappoints. Find people who are 70% aligned, invest in building the relationship. The other 30% is negotiated through shared experience. The compound effect, how 70 precisions multiply. Here's what most people the 70% rule. It's not just about speed. It's about compounding. When you make a decision 70% and act, you create data. You create feedback. This information makes your next decision easier and better. The person who decides at 70% and acts learns more in 1 month than the perfectionist learns in 1 year of research. This creates a competitive advantage curve that looks like this. A month 70% decision maker is slightly behind perfectionist in preparation quality. A month 70% decision maker has real-world data and has adjusted. Perfectionist is still preparing, but in a month 70% decision maker has iterated 3 times and is achieving results. Perfectionist is still almost ready. Our month 70% decision maker is an expert with a track record. Perfectionist has just launched or is still preparing. If the gap isn't linear, it's exponential. Because action creates information and information improves action. Perfectionism breaks this feedback loop. The 70% rule supercharges it. The Rebesk of what gag what you actually lose. Let's quantify what waiting costs you in ways your brain can't calculating. Opportunity costing. Every month you delay starting your business is a month of lost revenue, lost learning, and lost network building. Or if your business could generate $1,000 a month within 6 months of starting, then months of preparing cost you $300 in lost income plus 6 months of compounding experience. A confidence cost every you delay a difficult conversation, your anxiety grows and your self-respect diminishes. And the cost isn't just the postponed outcome, it's the erosion of your identity as someone who acts on their values. A time cost, your life is finite. Every week spent thinking about is a week you can't get back. If you live to 80, you have about 4,000 weeks total. How many have you already spent waiting for perfect conditions? A compounding costing, this is the big one. The person who starts at 70% in year 1 has 12 months of compounding by year 2. The person who waits for 100% and starts in year 2 has 0 compounding. The gap only widens. But the 21-day protocol rewiring your decision brain. A theory is useless without practice. Here's your step-by-step protocol for making the 70% rule your defaulting week 11 awareness in call brat bon. A day 130 decision audit. Carry a small notebook. Every time you catch yourself postponing a decision, write it down. Note what information you're waiting for. At day's end, ask, Could I decide that 70% right now? 47, confidence 7, and scoring our pick 3 pending decision. List 3 key variables for each. Score your confidence 0, 100% on each variable. Calculate your average if it's 65, 85%. Make the decision within 24 hours. Week 2, Gemma Crow Act Bayons. What your world the 50 on our day dollar stakes practice at the 11 roll dotus like your doll to 70% run day 20% fact how often your safik your day 114 medium stakes practice. Apply it to the decisions that affect your schedule, social events, projects. Commit to one decision you would normally postpone. Document the outcome. Week 3, major Apple BCAT Beyond, where you full 70% for a run day, full 70% for more the Fistphone framework. Create your wrong. Recovery kit a 72-hour deadline to decide and act or tell one person hour to person about your deadline. Accountability day 18-20 league review week for each 70% decision you made. Document what happened, how accurate were your confidence scores. What did you learn that you couldn't have learned by waiting? How has your tolerance for uncertainty changed? By day 21, you'll feel the shift. Decisions that used to paralyze you will feel manageable. You'll feel the fear, run the 70% calculation, and act anyway. Off the Temporal Collapse Apple scaling 70% thinking. If you're a manager, the 70% rule becomes even more powerful because it scales. Teams that adopt 70 decision-making move 3/5x faster than teams demanding consensus. Here's how to implement it. 1. To create a 70% budget. Give team members authority to make decisions up to a certain dollar time threshold to 70% confidence without approval. 2. Celebrate fast failure. When someone makes a 70% decision that fails cheaply and quickly, celebrate it publicly. What a cane, make it clear cheap, fast failures, defensive, slow decisions. 3. Model 70% king. Share your own 70 decisions. Say, bomb deciding this at 70% because the cost of waiting exceeds the cost of being wrong. Here's my recovery plan. Q1, buy worked with transformed is development with a 70% to ship. Rule. Product managers could ship features meeting 70% of design specs without executive approval. Features shipped 4x faster. Customer feedback flooded in. Revenue increased 40% year over year. Nurn the executives who resisted most. Perfectionists needing 100% sign-off. They nearly killed the initiative with what-if scenarios. The CEO had to explicitly say, your job is to find ways to say yes at 70%, not reasons to say no at 99%. The relate bunch of deboomens beyond 70% in love and friendship. The most 70 rule might be most valuable in relationships where perfectionism destroys more opportunities than anywhere else. Unbin dating, many people have a 20-item checklist for a partner. They wait for 100% across all categories. This is mathematically insane. A person who scores 100% on your checklist, is attracted to you, is available, and lives nearby has a probability approaching 0. The 7 rule for a relationship says find someone who scores 70% on your core 35 values and commit to building the rest together. Not settle for 70%. What if I told you that the difference between people who transform their lives and those who stay stuck has nothing to do with big breakthroughs, heroic efforts, or massive changes? What if the real secret is so small, so seemingly insignificant that your brain actively ignores it, dismissing it as not worth the effort, while it chases the next big idea, the next perfect plan, the next life-changing opportunity? But here's the truth that will make you uncomfortable. You're thinking too big, and your big thinking is paralyzing you. Every day, you make 1,000 tiny decisions to not act because the action seems too small to matter. Writing one paragraph won't finish my book. Making one sales call won't build my business. Doing one push-up won't get me in shape. So you wait for the day when you can write for 3 hours, make 50 calls, do a full workout, and that day never comes. But the person who writes one paragraph every morning will only have a finished manuscript in 8 months. The person who makes one sales call every day, they have a 6-figure commission by year end. The person who does one push-up, they become someone who works out daily, because one push-up always turns into 20, but a welcome to the 1% rule, the invisible engine behind every sustained transformation. It's not about motivation. It's not about leverage. The mathematical certainty that small, consistent actions compound into exponential results over time. And once you understand how this works, you'll never look at Saming Bay again. The compound Benung paradox, why small feels stupid, but wins every time. Your brain is terrible at math. Specifically, it's terrible at exponential math. It can understand linear progress 111.3, but it cannot intuitively grasp compounding 100 bayballs D3078. This is why the 1% rule feels irrational. Your brain sees, write one paragraph, and calculates, at this rate, it will take 300 days to finish my book. That's too slow. I need to wait until I can write 3 chapters in a weekend. But here's what your brain can't see. Who writes one paragraph every day doesn't just write 300 paragraphs. They become a writer. Their identity shifts. Their skill improves. Their momentum builds. Their network notices. Opportunities appear. They write day 100 wanting pages, not paragraphs. By day 200, they're finishing chapters in a sitting. By day 300, they have a book, and more importantly, they are an author. The person waiting for the perfect weekend to write 3 chapters. They're still waiting. When they have 0 pages, 0 skill development, 0 identity shift, and 0 momentum. There. Big thinking. Produce exactly nothing. This is the compounding paradox. Small actions feel ineffective but produce results. Big plans feel productive but produce paralysis. Let me show you the math that will change how you think about progress forever. You feel fulgur and sugar of food. You amor berti 60 convey pas dixie mach first mons prejo rigor ferns and enjoy gets line during August house called by magarchi 8 slide to her resili. Train sales only make pasels ones and jibas a mox perceptor dad with a new 4 elite line of actual is one through Iker with rackstrade jam and inker trezi and tells pod now comfortable a man new through tarcher being march increases 3 calls day building momentum April December sus 3.35 calls in 5 calls so day ends year den thouso aids 1040 1,000 clients 40 $400 $1,000 40 100 pubs $20 and 20 claws and $20 dollar revenue. Person B didn't work harder. Person B didn't have more talent. Person B simply understood that consistency compounds while intensity depletes. This is why every 30-day transformation challenge fails. Intensity cannot beat consistency. At every day, the person who does 1 push-up every day for 365 days ends the year in far better shape than the person 100 push-ups on day 1 and injures themselves. The neuroscience of momentum, building your action highway. Every time you take a small action, you're not just moving forward, you're building infrastructure. Your brain creates neural pathways like highways that make the next action easier. Our scientists call this neuroplasticity in action, but you can think of it as momentum memory. And here's what's happening in your brain when you practice the 1% rule. Day 11, you write 1 paragraph. Your brain resists. That feels unnatural. Your mental energy is high as you're building a new pathway from scratch. It feels like blazing a trail through dense forest. A day 10 tag, the pathway is clear. You've walked it 10 times. The resistance is lower. A bit still requires effort, but it's familiar now. A day 30 you've built a dirt road. A day walker, you can walk it with minimal conscious thought. That's becoming your default. A day 1000, you have a 4-lane highway. The action is automatic. Not taking action now requires more effort than taking it. You've become the person who just writes every morning or makes sales calls naturally. This is why the 1% rule is so powerful. It doesn't just produce results. It rewrites your identity. By the time you've built the highway, you're not even being disciplined. You're just being yourself. You're the person waiting for the perfect day to start. They're still at day 0 every day. No highway. No momentum. No identity shift. The dopamine reboot. Why small wins rewire your reward system. Remember the dopamine deception from chapter 1. How your brain gets addicted to research because it provides easy rewards. But the 1% rule is the antidote because it reboots your reward system to value action over consumption. Here's the critical distinction. When you read about success, your brain gets a dopamine hit that feels like progress. But it's empty calories. When you take a small action and see a small result, even if it's just wrote 1 paragraph, your brain gets a different kind of dopamine hit. That's nutritious progress. At 880 RET comes with identity reinforcement. VM someone who writes. A skill development, you got 1% better. Momentum, you're on day 7 of a streak. Real world feedback, the paragraph exists. This is why tracking your streak is so powerful. Jerry Seinfeld famously marked an X on a calendar for day he wrote jokes. He didn't focus on writing brilliant jokes. He focused on not breaking the chain. The streak itself became the reward system. Your brain learns action produces rewards. Consistency produces identity. The research dopamine loop gets replaced by an action dopamine loop. You start craving the satisfaction of checking the box, marking the X, maintaining the streak. When another perfect bonobism and good oding when becomes perfect, the 1% rule is kryptonite to perfectionism because it redefines the goal. Perfectionism says, the work must be flawless before it can be seen. The percent rule says, the work must be done before it can be improved. This is the iteration principle. Bomb perfection beats perfect in action because imperfect action can be improved. Perfect in action is just nothing. When you write 1 paragraph, you have something to edit. When you make 1 sales call, you have feedback to adjust. When you build 1 feature, you have user to guide the next one. When the perfectionist is trying to build the perfect airplane in the hangar, the 1% practitioner builds a kite, flies it, learns about wind, builds a better kite, learns more, and eventually builds an airplane that actually flies. Eager always in version 1 versarasing always. The iPhone 1 couldn't even copy and paste. The first Tesla was a converted Lotus with a trunk that didn't open properly. Jeff Bezos personally packed boxes in his garage. They all started with 1% versions and compounded from there. That your first version will be embarrassing. That's not a bug. That's the feature. The embarrassment is what teaches you what to improve. If you wait for a version that isn't embarrassing, you'll wait forever. The 30-day MB Crow act on protocol, your B-dentity transformation engine, enough theory. Here's your implementation blueprint. This is a neural rewiring program. The rule is 1. You must choose one area of life and business, health, creativity, relationships. 2. You will take one micro action every single day for 30 days. 3. The action must take less than 10 minutes. 4. But Oda, you must track it visibly. Calendar app journal. 5. Missing 1 day is fine. Missing 2 days resets you to day 1. What if I told you that the knot in your stomach before you hit send on that important email, the racing thoughts that keep you up at night before a big presentation, the cold sweat when you think about launching your project, these aren't signs that you're not ready, but they're signs that you're exactly where you need to be. And the people who achieve extraordinary things have learned to interpret these signals completely differently than you do. Your fear isn't a stop sign. It's a lighthouse. It's not telling you, turn back. It's telling you, this matters, but somewhere along the way, you learned to misread the signal. You learned that anxiety equals danger, that nervousness means you should wait, that discomfort is a warning to retreat. You've been running from the very sensations that signal you're on the right track. You are every successful person you admire, every entrepreneur, every artist, every leader feels the exact same fear you do. The difference isn't that they're fearless. The difference is that they've trained their brains to interpret fear as fuel rather than a brake. When they've mastered what Navy SEAL stress inoculation and psychologists call cognitive reappraisal. But you can call it what it is, fear reframing. By the end of this chapter, you won't just understand this protocol. You'll have rewired your brain's response to anxiety. One of the sensations that used to paralyze you will become the sensations that propel you. The voice that said, wait, will say go. And you'll finally understand why the world's top performers don't seek comfort. They seek meaningful discomfort. Either the fear translat buon error why your brain speaks the wrong language. Your brain is a pattern matching machine, and its favorite pattern is threat detection. When you feel anxiety, your brain scans its database and asks, so, what does this feeling usually mean? And the answer, based on millions of years of evolution, is almost always danger. But here's the critical distinction your brain can't make on its own. Not all anxiety is created equal. There's tiger anxiety, which means you're about to be eaten. One of theirs, social rejection anxiety, which feels like death but is actually just embarrassment. And there's growth anxiety, which is the physiological sensation of your identity expanding beyond its current container. Your brain lumps all three into the same category. Ovo bad, et. Doesn't distinguish this might kill you, and that change you. Both feel like threats because both involve uncertainty, and uncertainty registers as potential death to your primitive threat detection system. This is what B call the fear translation error, but your brain is reading a sophisticated emotional signal with a primitive translator. That's like trying to understand a Shakespeare sonnet using a toddler's vocabulary. The signal is there, but the interpretation is hopelessly crude. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. Meet David, a 3-year-old architect who's been thinking about starting his own firm for 7 years. Every time he sits down to make the first call to a potential client, he feels tightness in his chest, racing thoughts about potential rejection, a strong urge to check email instead, a voice saying, you should research more first. David's brain translates this as, bomb not ready, this is too risky, Bash should wait. But those sensations actually him for preachiliering. Here's what those hesi, dracing, drain, praisable scenarios host high sign of intelligence, not dysfunction. Urge to check email, his brain seeking the familiar normal resistance to growth. Voice saying, research more. His brain protecting his current identity. None of these are danger signals. They're all growth signals. But David can't see that because no one ever taught him the language. The 3 types of fear, a field guide to your anxiety. Before you can reframe fear, you need to identify which type you're experiencing. Your brain experiences 3 fundamentally different types of anxiety, but they all feel the same in your body. Learning to distinguish them is the first step in the fear reframing protocol. The type of leg serve bevol fear the tiger, and this is legitimate danger. Your life or safety is at risk. Your heart races and narrows, your body prepares for fight or flight. This fear is rare in modern life unless you're in a war zone or being chased by an actual tiger. What it feels like is sudden, intense, focused on immediate physical threat. What to dog listen to it, or often at a run, fight or freeze as needed. How often you'll encounter it almost never in decision-making contexts. A type 2 sock bal fear the tribe. This is fear of rejection, embarrassment, judgment. Your body reacts as if social exclusion equals death. Because for our ancestors, it often did, but it added a being cast down the tribe meant starvation or predation. Your brain hasn't updated for modern society. What it feels like anxiety about what others will think, fear of looking foolish, worry about status loss. What to dog recognize it as outdated software, or the tribe. That matters isn't your social media followers. It's your authentic self in real relationships. How often you'll encounter at you daily in any growth activity. A type 3 growth fear, the threshold. This is the fear of becoming someone new. That's the anxiety that accompanies identity expansion. It feels like standing at the edge of a cliff, not because you'll fall, but because you'll have to jump and trust you'll fly. Worry, what it feels like uncertainty about who you'll become, discomfort with unfamiliar territory, excitement mixed with dread. A what to dog, lean into it. This is the only fear worth pursuing. How often you'll encounter it whenever you're about to do something meaningful. Here's the key insight of most peer 3 people inert type growth fear as type 1 survival fear. They feel the physical sensations of anxiety and think, bomb in danger, when they should think, bomb about to grow. David the architect wasn't experiencing survival fear. He wasn't in physical danger, but he was experiencing growth fear, the specific anxiety that accompanies stepping into a bigger identity. But because he couldn't translate the signal, he treated growth like death and retreated. The physiology of reframe boundary, what changes in your body. Fear reframing isn't positive thinking, just be optimistic. That's a physiological rewiring of how your brain and body respond to stress signals, and it happens through a process called arousal reappraisal. Let me explain what's happening in your body when you experience fear, because this is the key to transforming it. When you perceive a threat, real or imagined, your sympathetic nervous system activates, your adrenal glands release adrenaline and cortisol, your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tense. This is the stress response. Most people interpret these sensations as negative, bomb freaking out. Bomb so nervous. This is bad. This interpretation creates a secondary stress response. Stress about stress. And then your body reacts to the threat, and then your mind reacts to your body's reaction, creating a feedback loop of escalating anxiety. But here's what researchers at Harvard discovered: the physiological sensations of anxiety are nearly identical to the physiological sensations of excitement. Increased heart rate, shallow breathing, muscle tension, heightened alertness. They're the same physical response, and the only difference is how you label it. A groundbreaking study, participants were told to reframe their pre-performance anxiety as excitement. They simply said, bomb excited, out loud before a stressful task. Their performance improved significantly compared to those who said, bam anxious, or those who tried to calm down. This is the core of the fear reframing protocol. You don't eliminate the sensations, you relabel them. When David feels tightness before calling a potential client, instead of thinking, bomb not ready, he'll think, my body is preparing for something important. This is the energy B need. When his thoughts race, instead of bomb spiraling, he'll think, my brain is generating scenarios. When this is strategic thinking in action. When he feels the urge to check email instead of, I need more information, he'll think, my brain is seeking comfort because BM about to grow. That's the sign, bam, on the right track. This isn't delusional. That's accurate. Those sensations are preparation energy. Those racing thoughts are scenario generation. That urge for comfort, B, as a sign you're leaving familiar territory. You're just translating them correctly for the first time. The Kong by Vriapria B Salteken Biki, your new mental software. A cognitive reappraisal is the technical term for changing your emotional response by changing your interpretation of a situation. That's the single most effective technique for transforming anxiety into action, and it's shockingly simple once you understand the mechanism. Here's the step-by-step protocol. Step 11. Not bans the physical sensat bonds before you can reframe. You must notice. When you feel anxiety, pause and inventory your body. Where do you chest, stomach, shoulders? What does it feel like? Tightness, heat, tingling. What's your breathing like? Shallow, rapid. Step 2. Name the sensat bonds accurately. Don't label them. Anxiety or nervousness. Use neutral, physiological language. My heart rate is elevated. My chest feels tight. My breathing is shallow. This creates cognitive distance. You're observing your body, not identifying with the emotion. Now step 3. Being a new meaning and now translated. My heart rate is elevated because my body is mobilizing energy for an important task. My chest feels tight because bomb at my growth edge. My breathing is shallow because bomb focused. But for it though a steward. Reframe the change the storing. This isn't dangerous. This is meaningful. This is an opportunity. This isn't fear. This is excitement. Step 5. Act from the new frame. Take one small action that aligns with your new interpretation. If you're excited, you lean in. B, if you're prepared, you perform. The action reinforces the new frame, creating a positive feedback loop. Let me show you how this works in practice with David the architecting old patterning, a sensation chest tightness before calling a potential client, a B interpretation. B, I'm not ready. This is too risky. Emotion fear. Avoidance or action X email instead, or result reinforces fear pattern new patterning, a sensation chest before calling a potential client observation. My heart rate is elevated. My breathing is shallow. My ape interpretation. My body is preparing for important action. This is my growth edge. A reframing. This is meaningful discomfort. Bum excited to grow. Action makes the call. Result talk reinforces courage pattern. Each time you run this protocol, you strengthen the new neural pathway. Auto. After 10 repetitions, the reframing becomes automatic. After 50-100, your brain's default response to growth anxiety becomes lean in instead of void. The exposure protocol building your fear immune system. Cognitive reappraisal is powerful, but it's even more effective when combined with graduated exposure. You don't just reframe the fear. You expose yourself to it in controlled doses until your brain learns it's not dangerous. What a hair. This is how therapists treat phobias. Someone afraid of spiders doesn't start by holding a tarantula. They start by looking at pictures of spiders, then being in the same room as a spider, then observing a spider, then touching a small spider, and eventually holding a larger one. On each exposure proves to the brain, this didn't kill me, but can handle slightly more next time. 15 is pure of a whole drops 5 to 10 nice 15 levels level 1 I don't fraction instead of word practice to a whole practice them sharing multiple schlein days toujours as this shake level note expert exposure of the letter of the step 11 and company increases the fellow specific work publisher pills from all levels of the first one piece of work compressing and tracking 2 lays 2 goals 30 for the action you've been launched to burn the launch the comes the project have the conversation make the ask your anxiety will be high but your total will be high but your tolerance will be higher your transfer will be higher have 30 versus per hour of exposures proving this is uncomfortable but dangerous by day 30 your brain assessment system has been recalibrated Abafa Waka survival threat now registers as growth discomfort. You've built fear immunity. And the fabulous reapro be Saul when things actually go wrong. Here's the objection by always herg. But what if if do all this reframing and B still fail? What if by make the call and get rejected? Then my fear, what if by launch the project and nobody cares? Then my fear was right. This is where the deepest level of fear reframing happens, reframing failure itself. Most people see failure as evidence their fear was justified. See, Bab told you by wasn't ready. But here's the truth, failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is data collection on the path to success. Let me say that again because it's the most important sentence in this book. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is data collection on the path to success. Whatever when you reframe failure this way, everything changes. Old framework. Our action, failure. By was right to be afraid. Avoid future action, new framework. Action, any result, a data collected, adjust, a next action on the new framework. There is no failure. There's only feedback, a no. From a potential client isn't rejection, it's market feedback. A launch that nobody notices isn't humiliation, it's product market fit data. A conversation that goes badly isn't proof you're incompetent. It's information about communication style, and this is how Thomas Edison is 10,000 failures. To invent the light bulb, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Glitch, but accurate each. Failure was data that informed the next attempt. Let me give you a modern example. Elisa, a graphic designer, used the fear reframing protocol to start selling digital products. Her first launch made $47 in 30 days. She could have interpreted this as failure. See, nobody wants what bomb offering. Buy should quit. But instead, she reframed it. $47 means someone did want it, but not many, but some. What did those buyers have in common? What did the 10,000 people who didn't buy need instead? She analyzed the data and discovered her $47 came from 3 small business owners in the health industry. She created a product specifically for health businesses. Her next launch made $200. Her third launch, informed by feedback from the second, made $87. The 47. Failure wasn't failure. It was market intelligence that a $1,000 research firm couldn't have provided. She got paid to learn what the market wanted. This is the ultimate fear reframing. You stop fearing failure because failure doesn't exist. There's only data feedback. And the next iteration, the regret embazitbu on framework. Jeff Bezos' secret has said that his major life decisions are guided by a regret minimization framework. When facing a scary choice, he imagines himself at 80 years old and asks, will I regret doing this? Or will I regret not doing this? Almost always. The answer is you'll regret not doing it. Because regret is what happens when fear wins. Regret is the tax you pay on the road not taken. A research on end-of-life reflection shows that people's biggest regrets aren't failures. They're omissions, or they regret the chances not taken, the words not spoken, they dreams not pursued. They rarely regret trying and failing. They always regret waiting and wondering. So when you feel that growth fear, ask yourself, on 10 years, will B be proud by waited until B felt ready? A nader will be proud B started despite the fear. The answer is always the same. The SPACs month transform at Buong David's complete fear reframing journey. Let me show you what happened when David the architect committed to the full fear reframing protocol. Will end the month foundation. David practice cognitive reappraisal daily. Every time he felt anxiety about starting his firm, he went through the 5 steps. On AM, he noticed his physical sensations, named them neutrally, reframed them as growth signals, and took one micro-action, researching one potential client, drafting one email. His anxiety didn't decrease, but his relationship with it changed. He'd seeing it as a stop sign and started seeing it as a compass pointing toward what mattered. A month 2 exposure, David began graduated exposure. He emailed one former colleague asking for coffee. He posted one article about architecture on LinkedIn. He told his wife about his business idea. She was supportive, which reduced his fear of, what if my family doesn't believe in me? He tracked his anxiety levels and noticed they dropped 40% after each exposure. The fear was lying about the danger. David month 3 failure. David made his first real pitch to a potential client. He was rejected. His old framing would have been, see, I'm not ready. Ba should wait until Ba have more experience. His new framing was, I Ba got my first no. That's data. What did Ba learn? And Ba, they needed a specialized skill I don't have yet. Ba can develop that skill or find clients who need what Ba offer. A month 40 momentum. David made 10 pitches. He got 2 maybes and 1 yes. A small residential project for $8,000. Learned he did the work imperfectly, learned doing and delivered value. The client was happy and referred him to a friend. The month FEB identity shift. David stopped saying, thinking about starting a firm, and started saying, Bomb have a small architecture practice. The identity shift was complete. He wasn't a corporate employee with a secret dream anymore. He was a business owner building client by client. In month 6 compound growth, David had 3 active clients and 2 proposals out. He was making 60% of his corporate salary working 30 hours a week. That year had more energy, more purpose, and more freedom than he'd had in years. The growth fear was still there, but he now interpreted it as bomb on the right track, instead of bomb in danger. David didn't eliminate fear. He reframed it as a compass that points directly toward what matters most. But he still feels anxiety before every pitch, every client meeting, every new project. But now he knows beef bomb not feeling this, bomb not growing. Ebb bomb comfortable, bomb coasting. You're a fear bot Obama bloop your 30-day framing program. Here's your step-by-step protocol to rewire your brain's fear response in the next 30 days to 1 fin wu awareness in translate by on day 17th, a daily practice seek fear journaling. When you feel anxiety, pause and writing what physical sensations do be feel. A moment be specific to what is my current interpretation. Bomb not ready. What is the accurate translation? My body is preparing for growth. What type of fear is this? Baker survival servotional growth evening reflection. Review your day's anxiety episodes. How many were growth fear misinterpreted as survival fear? You're actually saying the Rainer Cropertus days to 8 MX14 to fight out loud weej. Medali Denishin that triggerify one actions your growth fear. Set them for 5 minutes. Take the smallest possible version of that action. Track anxiety before Neta 1.10 and after notice that it always drops post action. A week 3 fram Benji Ben real T BIMES days 15-21. Before we practice the reframe mantra but taking any that triggers fear. Say this out louding. This is growth anxiety, not survival fear. These sensations are preparation energy. Bomb excited to become the person who does this. Take the action immediately after saying the mantra week 4 gi fabluer bummers ba on days 22 to 30. Upper a daily practicing ba intentional ba imperfection. Take where you intention daily, do it imperfectly. Send an email with a minor typo, launch something that's good enough, not great. Admit you don't know something in a meeting. Document, did the world end? What actually happened? Approve your brain. The goal is to prove to your brain through direct experience that imperfection is not only survivable, it's the path to growth. The Elabai felong pract but biseg fear as your compass. After 30 days, you won't be fearless. You'll be fear literate, speak the language, you'll interpret the signals correctly. The ultimate goal is to develop what we call fear wisdom. The ability to read your anxiety like a compass. When you feel that familiar chest tightness, you won't ask, what's wrong with me? You'll ask, what matters enough to make me feel this way? You'll learn that. Small fears mean small growth, big fears mean you're on the edge of significant transformation. No fear means you're coasting in your comfort zone. The most successful people you know aren't fearless. They're fear discerning. They know which fears to lean into growth and which to manage survival. They know that social fear is a paper tiger. They know that growth fear is the only compass that points toward what matters. The F-binal reframing you are not broken. Before we end, I need to tell you something important. You are not broken. Your fear response isn't a bug, it's a feature. Kept your ancestors alive long enough to create you. Pat's a sophisticated, powerful system that you've simply been misreading. The work isn't to eliminate fear. The work is to become fluent in its language, to hear the signal and understand the message, to stop treating growth like death, to stop waiting for confidence and start building courage through action. A courage isn't the absence of fear. Our courage is fear that has said its prayers and gotten on with the work. That's anxiety that has been reframed as excitement. It's uncertainty that has been accepted as the price of meaningful action. When you master the fear reframing protocol, you don't become fearless. You become fear fluent. And that changes everything. What if I told you that the difference between people who solve impossible problems and those who stay stuck in obvious ones isn't intelligence, experience, or even creativity? Or the difference is that some people have mental models, thinking tools that transform complexity into clarity, while others are trying to solve 21st century problems with Stone Age intuition. Every day you face decisions that seem complicating. Should I take this job? Is this business idea viable? Or why is my team underperforming? How do I fix my relationship? And every day, your brain does what it's always done. It searches for patterns, grabs the first familiar one, and applies it. The result, and Monday you solve the wrong problem, miss the real leverage point, and wonder why your effort produces so little results. And this is the mental model gap, and it's the invisible source of 90% of your bad decisions. While you're trying to think harder, others are thinking differently, but they're using frameworks borrowed from physics, engineering, biology, and economics to see structures you can't see, anticipate consequences you can't predict, and find solutions that seem like magic to everyone else. You'll have, by the end of this chapter, you won't just understand mental models, you'll have built what Charlie Munger calls a lattice of models that allows you to approach any challenge from multiple angles, recognize patterns others miss, and make decisions that look brilliant in retrospect, but are simply the product of better thinking tools. The Bengal model track why your brain is a one-trick pony. Your brain is a pattern-matching machine, and its favorite trick is analogy. When you encounter a new problem, your brain immediately asks, what does this remind me of? Then it applies the solution from that similar situation to the new one. This worked great when our ancestors encountered. This plant looks like that poisonous plant Bezos saw last year. It's terrible. When you're trying to decide what a business and your brain says, this reminds me of when Ale tried something new in college and failed. The problem with analogy thinking is that surface similarity masks structural difference. Two situations can look similar but have completely different underlying dynamics. Applying the wrong mental model is like trying to car with airplane controls. You have a tool, but it's the wrong tool for the system you're operating in. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. A talented software engineer who wants to become a manager. She applies the same mental model that made her a great engineer: optimization. She optimizes her team's processes, writes detailed documentation, creates performance metrics, and tries to eliminate all inefficiencies. Her fear team is 6 later, her team is miserable. 2P for is working 70-hour weeks, she's confused. She applied the model that made her successful as an individual contributor, so why isn't it working? Because managing humans isn't an optimization problem. That's a complexity problem. That the mental model of eliminate inefficiencies, maximize output, works great for code, that works terribly for people. People aren't functions to be optimized, they're systems to be nurtured. Jennifer was using a calculator to paint a portrait. This is the single model trap. When you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When your only mental model is optimization, every problem looks like an efficiency problem. When your only mental model is competition, every relationship looks like a zero-sum game. When your only mental model is scarcity, every opportunity looks like a threat. The world's best thinkers don't have higher BQs, they have more tools. They can look at a problem and say, this looks like an optimization challenge, but let me also apply systems thinking, check for second-order effects, consider incentives, and think about opportunity cost. While you're hammering, they're using a full toolbox. Are the lance of models building your thinking arsenal. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, is famous for saying, you've got to have models in your head, and you've got to array your experience, both vicarious and direct, on this lattice of models. This is the single most important concept in strategic thinking. A lattice is an interconnected structure where each piece reinforces the others. Mental models work the same way. When you have multiple models, they don't just add together, they multiply. Let me give you an example. And that you're thinking about launching a new product. If you only have the model of customer demand, you'll do market research, see if people want it, and launch if they do. That's good. But if you have 4 models: customer demand, will people want it? BAB incentive structures. How will this affect our sales team's behavior? Network effects. Will early adopters bring more users? Opportunity cost. What else could we build with these resources? Now you're seeing the problem from 4 angles. But you might discover that while customer demand exists, your sales team's incentives are misaligned, network effects are weak, and a different product has tanks the opportunity cost adjusted return. The single model thinker launches and fails. The lattice thinker pivots before spending a dollar, but or this is the power of the lattice that catches blind spots. One model's weakness is another model's strength. The Ascent Biomental model's your core thinking toolkit. You don't need to master every model ever created. You need about a dozen core models that apply across domains. Here are the essential ones. Model 11G eft barpras per bankietha bang, break problems down to fundamental truths and rebuild from there. Elon Musk used this to revolutionize rockets. Instead of accepting that rockets are expensive, he asking, what are rockets made of? What do those materials cost? What are the physical laws governing propulsion? He discovered rockets were expensive not by necessity, but by industry convention. This is why SpaceX can launch for a fraction of traditional costs. But how to apply when facing, this is how it's always done, problem asking. Baz that a law of nature or a human convention? Break it down to physics, math, or fundamental human psychology. Build up from there. A model 22nd order the ban every action has consequences which have their own consequences. First order thinking, we should lower prices to sell more. Second order thinking, if we lower prices, competitors might match, starting a price war that destroys margins industry-wide. You how to plig before any decision ask, and then what? Twice, what are the unintended consequences? Model 3 boens and boves people respond to incentives, both stated and unstated. If you want to understand behavior, don't listen to what people say. Watch what the system rewards. When a company that says, we value innovation, but punishes failure will never innovate. The incentive structure wins over stated values every time. How to apply for any system, company, family, society, map the incentives. What behaviors are actually rewarded? What are punished? A model design systems accordingly. A model 4 operating booty cost. Everything you choose means not choosing something else. The cost of reading this book is not reading another book. The cost of starting this business is not having time for that hobby. And most people never consider opportunity cost, so they say yes to everything and end up achieving nothing. How to apply for every major time or money commitment. ASCII. What am Bub giving up to do this? AB's this the highest value use of this resource. Model fig network effects and services become more valuable as more people use them. Facebook is useless with 10 users. Essential with 1 billion. Understanding network effects helps you predict which businesses will dominate and which will fade. How to apply when evaluating a business or technology, ask you, does this get better with more users? How strong is the network effect? Model 6 comparative advantage. You don't need to be the best at everything. You need to specialize in what you're relatively better at and trade for the rest. This applies to individuals and companies, and who tries to do everything themselves fails. The person who focuses on their edge and collaborates wins. How to identify your unique strengths. Outsource your partner for everything else. Stop trying to be well-rounded. A mocker, be sharply pointed. A Model 7 Bays boo in the bangang, update your beliefs as new evidence arrives. Most people form an opinion and then look for confirming evidence. Bayesian thinkers start with a prior probability and adjust it with each new data point. This prevents confirmation bias and keeps you flexible. How to, when you form an opinion, assign a confidence level. Each time you encounter new evidence, update that confidence. Be explicit about what would change your mind. A Model 80 Benvers Bond, solve problems backward. How to bias succeed. Ask, how to guarantee failure. Then do the opposite. How to become happy. Ask, how to become miserable. Answering isolation, no purpose, poor health. Then avoid those. And how to apply for any goal? Ask the inverted question. A model, the answers are often more actionable. Model 9G power laws, a small number of inputs create most outputs. 8L20 is the most famous version, but it's more extreme in modern domains. 1% of artists sell 90% of art. 1% of startups capture 90% of value. But understanding power laws helps you focus your effort on the high leverage activities. How to apply constantly ask what 20% of inputs create 80% of results. Then double down on that 20%. A Model 10 C-barcles of competence, know what you know and what you don't know. Most failures come from operating outside your circle of competence without knowing it. Warren Buffett won't invest in tech because it's outside his circle. He stays rich, others stray and get punished. How to map your skills honestly. You expand your circle through learning, but operate ruthlessly within it for important decisions. The Benegrat Boong models in action. Here's how these models work together in a real decision. Let's say you're offered a job at a startup. First principles, what is a job fundamentally? An exchange of time for money, learning, and network. What do buy actually need? Maybe it's learning, not money. Second ordered buy take this, ball learn startup skills. That might lead me to start my own company in 2 years. Of BV don't take it. Balls stay comfortable but stagnant. Ion Kubaben sensitives is how is the startup compensated? Equity you to think like an owner. Salary means they want you to think like an employee, which aligns with your goals. Opportunity costing. What other jobs could Bob get? What businesses could V start? What skills could Boo develop instead? A network effect saying, will this role connect me to people my future opportunities? A comparative advantage. Am uniquely suited for this role? Or could anyone do it? Will it develop my unique strengths? A Bayesian bum 60% confident this is a good move. What evidence would move that to 70%? Owen are talking to current employees, analyzing the customer financials. What would move it to 50%? Recent layoffs, founder drama, market decline, web inversion. How could this job ruin my life? Long hours destroy health, bad culture ruins confidence, golden handcuffs prevent future moves. A power or how to avoid those. A power loss. Will this role put me in the top % of my field? Or is it a commodity position? A circles of competency. Baz this role in my circle. Will it expand my circle in valuable directions? A single model thinker asks, Baz the salary good? On. A lattice thinker sees the decision from 10 angles simultaneously. The single model thinker takes the job for money and regrets it. The lattice thinker might take it or decline, but either way they make a decision aligned with their actual goals. Audiobook bail the model on protocol. How to build your lattice. You don't need to learn every model at once. You build your lattice one model at a time. Then integrate them. Right, you full on about for a moment to the journal life from 1 decision of his 3-2 where application of 4 flies del lyre found braid plice 1 of ways fakes 2 1 braid of fly 3 explanact rinks this week different dispatching and you will pod your about how the would have perspected your old single model approach. Notice the new and single model revealed face sites 30 grab on weeks 56th and a pick a second model apply models to apply both models to the same situation same situation notice same situation FT6 notice second model with the phase 6 on model and in phase 6 do they ask how they point to the same conclusion. Hey, confidence or high confidence, do they conflict? You need more information. Phase 40 glat bans bod. Ongoing. Our add one new model. Always apply new models alongside existing ones. Look for an intersections and the contradictions are where breakthrough insights hide the fabulous modest. When models hurt instead of help, mental models are powerful, but they can become dangerous when misused. Here are the failure modes to avoiding model BSU, falling in love with one model and applying it everywhere. The person who discovers incentives sees them in every situation. The person who learns about network effects sees them everywhere. Remember, no single model explains everything. A model las buenas es using models instead of thinking tools. You reference game theory, but don't actually apply its principles rigorously. You mention incentives, but don't map them comprehensively. Models require work. A model arrogancing believing that because you know the model, you see clearly. The more you learn about mental models, the more humble you should become. Each model reveals new blind spots. Model rebag babtig, refusing to update your models when reality contradicts them. Models are provisional. They evolve. Your job is to update them, not worship them. The case studying how mental models saved a failing company. Let me show you what happens when a leader builds a true lattice of models. Meet Michael, CEO of a software company that was bleeding money. His board wanted to fire him. His team was demoralized. His initial analysis using his default model optimization told him to cut costs, lay off staff, and work harder. Instead, Michael's 2 weeks building his lattice. First principles, what is a software company fundamentally? Or a system for converting code into customer value? Is our code not valuable, or are we just not reaching the right customers? A incentive is why are our salespeople underperforming? They get paid on annual contracts, but we've been pushing monthly subscriptions. Their incentives don't align with company goals. A network effects to do our customers bring us more customers. No, because our product doesn't have collaboration features. Each customer is an island. A second order B, if we cut costs now, what happens? And lose talent, slow development, and further behind competitors. A power loss, what 20% of customers create 80% of revenue. Enterprise clients, we've been focusing on small businesses. Our circle of competence, are we actually good at building software? Yes. Are we good at marketing it? No. Or should we partner for distribution? The lattice revealed the real problem, not a cost problem, not a product problem, an incentive and distribution problem. Michael changed the sales compensation to reward annual contracts. He added enterprise features that created network effects within companies. He partnered with a consulting firm that had enterprise relationships. He didn't cut costs. He invested in the 20% that mattered. Revenue tripled in 18 months. The board made him chairman. The single model thinker would have optimized his way to bankruptcy. On the lattice thinker saw the real leverage points. You're full for a moment breaker instead of point ply 90 bloop blood to wick reexis per d door. New to reek one master 4 days of personal Musk new to the mental one personal bias concerning new apply back the incentive structures in your workplace and abapi to identify 3 misaligned incentives on monthly expands board a month 2 5 2 6 to 6 bank add second origin hyperdy cost The Anskan order thinking first opportunity cost I 3 fix post ads are for each major decision. Write down. And then what? But a bark twilight coastics neflit leak. 788 weeks, 7ly the Weiss 20,000 ed power laws that 25% that produce 80% of result assess which of your relationships episode projects have network FX wits a month 3 bid banagrab bon on a week 9-10 gig and comparative advantage plex circles of competence, a map your true strengths V's. Right reply they write A5 and contradict and panoritis contradict the ange precision how multum analysis from double perspectives kadui go light twetters a stop ongo we add one new one model per month are always apply in conjunction with existing models or teach one model to someone else monthly, teaching forces mastery becoming the L by unbufeld y by felando pract by sig becoming a model collector. The best thinkers are model collectors. They read widely. Physics, biology, history, economics, not for the facts, but for the mental models. They ask, how would a biologist solve this business problem? How would a historian view this relationship conflict? How would a physicist approach this creative block? Your goal isn't to become a polymath who knows everything. That's to become a polymath of thinking tools. Someone who can approach any challenge with the right mental model, or better yet, a lattice of models that reveal insights no single perspective could see. When you master this, you'll notice something strange. Problems that seemed impossible become simple. Opportunities that were invisible become obvious. And decisions that paralyzed you become clear. Not because you got smarter, but because you finally have the right tools for the job. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to think in models. What if I told that the real reason you're not taking action on your dreams has nothing to do with your fear, your perfectionism, or your lack of mental models? Or if the real reason is that you're living in a social prison, and the guards are the people you call friends, family, and mentors. Every time you get close to breaking out, they pull you back in. Not with cruelty. Not with malice. With love, concern, and what they call reality. Or you're sure that's a good idea? Your mother asks, your certainty drops 20%. That sounds risky. Your best friend says, and your momentum evaporates. Most businesses fail. Your coworker mentions, and you spend the next 3 hours reaching failure rates instead of making your first sale. And these aren't evil people. They're invisible cage builders, and they've been constructing your prison since the day you were born. But here's what makes this cage truly diabolical. You built it yourself. You chose the friends who validate your limitations. You aerated the social media feed that reinforces your doubts. You joined the groups we're complaining about. How hard things the bonding ritual. Your environment isn't happening to you. You designed it unconsciously to keep you safe. And safety is the enemy of extraordinary. The good news. If you built the cage, you can dismantle it. And you don't need to abandon your family or become a hermit. You need to learn environmental design. The strategic art of making your social world pull you forward instead of holding you back. Well, by the end of this chapter, you'll have a systematic protocol for running your social circle, finding your action tribe, and insulating yourself from well-meaning dream killers without becoming an arrogant loner. The Turball bondage, why your brain prioritizes belonging over growth. Your brain evolved in tribes of 150 people. For 99% of human history, your survival depended on one thing: staying in the tribe's good graces. Getting exiled meant death. Disappointing the group meant fewer resources, fewer mates, less protection. So your brain developed an incredibly sophisticated system for monitoring social approval and adjusting your behavior to maintain belonging. This system worked perfectly on the savannah. Modern society. That's a nightmare, because today your tribe isn't 50 people who control your access to food and shelter. It's hundreds of loose connections. Family, friends, social media followers, coworkers. Each whispering their own version of, stay safe, don't change, remain predictable. The resulting you're neurochemically addicted to social approval, and you don't even know it. Every like on your post gives you a dopamine hit. Every nod of agreement releases oxytocin. Every "you're so brave" comment feels like progress, even when you're standing still. But your brain has confused social validation with actual progress, and it's destroying your ability to act independently. Now let me show you how this plays out in real time. Meet Sarah, a 34-year-old graphic designer with a dream of starting her own agency. And she's talented, has a solid portfolio, and knows 3 potential clients who would hire her immediately. She should have launched 6 months ago. But here's what her tribe has done. Her motherg. Are you sure you want to give up your stable job? What about health insurance? Net safety concern disguised as love twit and surdy drop friend. Her Beth could never do that. A bomb just not a risk taker like you. Backhanded compliment that frames Sarah as abnormal 15% identity doubt. Her coworker. My cousin started a business and went bankrupt in a year. Anecdotal bomb 30% overestimate percent her by Instagram feeding full of entrepreneurs posting about their hustle and grind, making her feel like she's not enough before she even starts. Comparison paralysis 25% motivation drain, her mentorg. You should wait until you have 6 months expenses saved. And well, meaning but arbitrary rule indefinite postponement. Each interaction seems small. Each comment comes from love. But cumulatively, they built a cage so effective that Sarah Active doesn't even try to escape. She tells herself she's being responsible, careful, strategic. But really, she's just managing her tribe's anxiety at the expense of her own future. This is tribal bondaging, the invisible set of social expectations that keeps you performing your current identity instead of becoming who you could be. Away on the approval adugayawang your social dopamine habit. Let's get uncomfortably specific about the neurochemistry. When feel full for of chemical sing, your bonding cycles so octaran identical. Rena release a cocktail validis. Your brain when feel good where life makes you serotonin in the state of feel respected and valued dopamine the reward chemical makes you want to repeat the behavior. This is the same neurochemical system that keeps you addicted to social media, junk food, and video games. Bats, social validation addiction, and it's more powerful than any drug because it feels like virtue. Your brain learns. When I stay in my current role, bag get praised. When I talk about my dreams, bag get concern. When stay safe, bag get love. When bad take risks, aga get warnings. A war. So you optimize for the praise, the concern, the warnings. You curate your behavior to maximize approval and minimize social friction. But here's what your brain can't see. The people giving you this approval are trapped in their own cages. Perfect. Your mother warns you about health insurance because her generation equated safety with virtue. Your friend calls you a risk taker because she's terrified of her own potential. Your coworker shares failure anecdotes because it validates his decision to stay put. But their approval is actually their own anxiety projected onto you. You're not receiving wisdom. You're receiving emotional baggage disguised as concern. Are the social dopamine hit you get from good job on that presentation? Feels good in the moment, but it's keeping you addicted to the wrong game. You're getting rewarded for playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And the environmental ad beats you taking stock of your prison guards before you can redesign your environment. You need to see it clearly. But I have most people no idea how much their social world is holding them back because they've never audited it. Here's your systematic audit protocol. The Sock Bell Energy app for each person in your inner circle family. Close friends, colleagues you interact with daily. Answer these questions like 1. Ape or impact or energy aftering with this person. Do you feel energized or drained? Scaling 5 out of 2 act beyond impact. Does this person encourage your specific goals or discourage them? Scale play 5 to 3. Bell if impact. Does this person expand your sense of what's possible or contract it? AKL scaling to 5 to 4. Accountability bomb impact. Does this person hold you to your commitments or accept your excuses? Scale to 5 to 0.5. Growth impact. Is this person actively pursuing their own growth or have they played hard? Scale to 5 to 5. A score each person 125. Anyone scoring below 10 is a cage builder. Anyone scoring up is a cage breaker. Most people will be surprised to find that 70% of their inner circle is scoring 15. Neutrally negative. They're not actively sabotaging you, but they're not helping either. They're passive prison walls. If you're a now, total your scores. If your inner circle's total score is below 50, you're trying to grow in an environment designed for stability. That's like planting a seed in concrete. That won't work, and it's not your fault. On the cage breaker archetype who you need in your life. Once you've identified the cage builders, you need to find cage breakers. But they specific people are rare, the specific characteristics. A cage breaker 11, the EV beatenst op-based bomb bost. This person believes growth is possible because they've done it themselves. They don't give you blind encouragement, they give you case studies. Babavita. When I started my business, had the same concern about health insurance. Here's how B solved it. They don't say, you can do it. They say, here's how I did it, and here's what you might apt. Cage breaker 2, the accountable by type partner. This person doesn't accept your excuses. Hidden when you say, didn't have time. They say, what got in the way? They don't shame you. They hold your standards. They're the person you text when you're about to skip a commit, and their reply is, you told yourself you'd do this. Are you going to let yourself down? Cage breaker 3G, the growth embirer. This person is on their own growth journey at or above your level. When you share your dream, they don't say, that's risky. They say, I'm working on something similar. Let's compare notes. They create positive competition and collaborative momentum. You cage breaker 40G, the brutal truth teller. This person loves you and hurt you. They'll say, you're not ready because you haven't done the work, not because it's risky. They'll point out when you're hiding behind research. They'll call your bluff. They're not nice. They're essential. A cage breaker 5G, the future you. This person is 25 years ahead of where you want to be. They've already built what you're building. They can see your blind spots because they used to have them. They don't just encourage, they illuminate the path. Most people have zero cage breakers. They have a circle of well-meaning cage builders who validate their limitations. You need at least 2 cage breakers to counterbalance 5 cage builders. The FBN Ben Bang Protocol, how to locate your cage breakers. Cage breakers don't advertise themselves. They're not on billboards, but they're not necessarily famous. You have to find them, and they're not where you think. What we're not to look your current friend group. They're selected for your current identity, or generic networking events. They're full of people collecting contacts, not building. Social media. Everyone's performing, not connecting. Where to look at paid communities. People who invest money in growth are serious, but your masterminds, courses, coaching programs, the fee filters out hobbyists. Action-oriented spaces, rock climbing gyms, CrossFit boxes, marathon training groups, startup accelerators. Places where people do hard things together. A vulnerability zone as coach epigrams. Supportive online communities where people share real struggles, not highlight reels. Our result-based environments, places where outcomes are measuring sales teams, performance marketing meetups, real estate brokerages. You can't fake results. When the approach protocol, when you find a potential cage breaker, don't just add them on LinkedIn. That's useless. Here's what to do in phase 1. Prov D to value for breast S week 112 pro. Don't ask for help. Offer it. B, saw you're working on X. B, have experience with why that might help. Can send you a quick insight. Provide value with zero expectation. Cage breakers are inundated with asks. They're starving for gives. A phase 2 you ask for crow comments to week 3/4. Once you've provided value, ask for something tiny. BA have one specific question about how you handled MU specific challenge N. Could B email it to you. B if they say yes and respond, you have a warm connection. But mood of phase 3G, create a value loop. 5-8, find ways to create mutual value. 5 met someone who could help with your project. Want an intro. Tool that solved the problem you mentioned. Convey share it. You're not networking. You're collaborating. The 44-9 phase, a structure, week 112 and only now, after 2-3 months of value exchange. Propose a structure. We've been helping each other informally. Would you be open to a monthly 30-minute call where we hold each other accountable to our goals? The answer will almost always be yes. If you followed the protocol, most people try to skip to phase 4. They meet someone successful and immediately ask for mentorship. That's like proposing marriage on the first date. It doesn't work, and it's disrespectful. And they up in the Saka Bal Medba Detox, breaking the comparison cage. If your social circle is a prison, social media is the digital torture chamber. That's specifically designed to trigger your tribal anxiety and keep you addicted to approval. Here's what it does to Yog 1. Oedabet amap opal bias comparvis song. You see someone's highlight reel and compare it to your behind the scenes. You don't see their 100 failed attempts. Just the one that worked. This makes your messy middle feel like failure. 2. Acrobat creates artsy baw alter balter babesque to feed of people who think like you, creating an echo chamber that reinforces your current identity. If you're a corporate professional, your feed is full of corporate professionals. No wonder you can't imagine being an entrepreneur. 3. A Muppet rewards performance over real bell tiger. You get dopamine for posting about your goals, which feels like progress. You get validation for your current identity, which makes changing it feel like betrayal. 4. Adding Ibn Hutabat multiple by is your cage bubble letters every comment like, every like, concerned. Don becomes a bar in your prison. Or are you sure? From 50 acquaintances feels like social consensus that you're making a mistake. The detox protocol, you don't have to delete all social media. Aleka you have to redesign your relationship with it. A level have delete week 1-2 neck delete the apps from your phone. Keep only desktop access. This reduces the dopamine drip feed and gives you control over when you engage. Wheat Eferia level 2 and Mu 3 4 and mute everyone who scores below 15 on your social energy audit. You don't have to unfriend them. Just stop seeing their anxiety-inducing posts.
Mute the concerned relatives.
The armchair critics, mute the performative entrepreneurs. Auto level 5 a recure at week 6 a follow only cage their process, not just their results. People who share failures transparently. People expand your sense of what's possible. Follow 20 people who score 20/20 on your audit. The level 4 create week 78 a post your own process. I'm in try to share your fears. Document your micro actions. This does 2 things. Pet attracts other cage breaks to you. Punt 202 pet makes your public, which creates positive pressure to continue. A level 5 bounder viz and ongoing. Never check social media before one alarm. Never post when you're anxious. Ederay then never read comments within minutes of posting. These boundaries protect you from reactive loops. Most people can't do level 1, they're too addicted. If that's you, start with level 5. Create one boundary then another. Win yourself slowly. Peopling the fam Bali protocol, handling the people you can't delete. You can't fire your family. You can't unfriend your mother. Well, you can, but it creates other problems. So how do you handle cage building family members? And format on W by beatted you for family members who love you but fear change and share your goals but not your process. Bomb exploring some opportunities is better than bomb starting a business and here's my detailed plan. Their anxiety doesn't need details to feed on. Landed to share your wins but not your struggles is fine. I'm terrified about cash flow is not. They can't handle your uncertainty. That's what therapists and cage breakers are for. A redirect their concerning. Appreciate you caring. Can ask you to help with specific small tasking, or giving them a job channels their anxiety into support. For family members who are actively toxic-y, don't justify, argue, defend, or explain. I'm doing this is a complete sentence. I use the broken record technique. Understand your concern. I'm doing this. Repeat as needed. Create but don't engage with content. Or create physical distance needing move out, visit less. Take calls less frequently. You're not abandoning them. You're protecting your growth. The boundary scrar PT when a family member launches into concern mode, use this exact script. Appreciate that you care about me. I'm working with mentors who have done this successfully. I'm following a proven plan. I don't need advice right now. Need support. Can you support me? If they say no, you've identified a cage builder. If they say yes, you've recruited them. If they say, but, repeat the script. Don't engage with the, but. The act on be building you're an intentional community you can't grow alone. The lone wolf dies, you need a tribe. But not the one you were born into or the one you fell into by default. You need an action tribe, a group of people who are growing at your pace or faster, who hold you accountable, who celebrate your wins and call out your excuses. Here's how to build one from scratch. Element 20. The core trio. Find 2 other people at your growth level who are building similar things. Meet weekly. Structure: 10 minutes wins from last week, 20 minutes current blockers, group troubleshoots, 20 minutes goals for next week, 10 minutes, accountability commitments. Element 2. The mentor node. 1 person 2 5 years ahead. Meet monthly. Ask specific questions, report on progress. Their role is to illuminate blind spots, not to hold your hand. Element 3. The peer pod. 5 8 people at your level. Meet monthly, share resources, collaborate. This is your network. Element 4. The master. Andy 15 20 people in a paid program, quarterly in person. This is your expanded network and your source of new cage breakers. The rules of act on Beast. 1. No complaint sessions. You're here to solve problems, not vent. 2. No excuses. Didn't have time is banned. Say, didn't make it a priority, or don't come. 3. No spectators. Everyone must be actively building something. No theorists. 4. Radical accountability. Miss your commitment twice, you're out. Kind but firm. 5. Value first. Ask, how can I help? Before, can you help me? The energy vampy. My dentef cat on spotting the people who drain you. Energy vampires don't wear capes. They wear concerned expressions. They say things like, just want you to be realistic. Have you thought about the risks? I'm just playing devil's advocate. Not everyone can succeed at that. Could never do what you're doing. These phrases seem harmless. They're not. They're energy extraction mechanisms. They drain your momentum while making the vampire feel wise and concerned. And Denif Cat on protocol. When you leave an interaction, ask yourself, do I feel energized or drained? Energy impact. Do I feel more capable or less capable? Capability impact. Do I feel clearer or more confused? A clarity impact. Did they offer help or just concerns? So actionability of 3 out of 4 are negative. You've found an energy vampire. The cage breaker maintenance. Keeping your environment clean. Building an action tribe isn't a one-time event. It's environmental hygiene, something you do weekly. Weekly audit. Who did I interact with this week? How did each interaction affect my energy and action? Who do I need to spend more time with? Who do need to create boundaries with? Monthly pronunji. Who unfollow 1 energy vampire, reach out to 1 potential cage breaker, have 1 difficult conversation about boundaries, attend 1 event where cage breakers gather, quarterly reset. Review your total social energy score. If it's below 75, you need radical change. Consider a social media detox. Join a new paid community. The case study: how Sarah dismantled her cage. Let's return to Sarah, the graphic designer. Here's how she implemented everything in this chapter. Week 1 tune. Audit. Sarah scored her inner circle. Her mother 8, her best friend 12, her coworker 6, her boyfriend 15, her brother 20, total 61. She was trying to grow in an environment designed for safety. Week 3 to 4. Find cage breakers. Sarah joined a paid mastermind for creative entrepreneurs, 2 Sozos and Yeard. She found her first cage breaker, a designer 2 years ahead who'd built a 6-figure agency. She provided value first by sharing a tool that streamlined her process. Week 560. Set boundaries. Sarah told her mother, and appreciate your concern, but I'm working with mentors who've done this, and need your support, not your advice. Her mother was hurt but adapted. She muted her coworker on social media. Week 780 Build Action Tribe. Sarah formed a core trio with 2 other designers from the mastermind. They met weekly. She found a mentor in the mastermind who agreed to monthly calls. Week 9 120 Prune and Grow. Sarah spent less time with her best friend Seva's Cage Builder and more time with her brothers Cage Breaker. She posted her process publicly, attracting 3 more cage breakers. 6 months later, Sarah had 5 clients, $9,000 a month in revenue, and had quit her job. Her mother was now her biggest fan because she saw results. Her old coworker still thought she was crazy. Her action tribe had expanded to 8 people. Sarah didn't change her dreams. She changed her environment. That's the only difference. Your 30-day environment redace in protocol. Here's your systematic plan to dismantle your cage. Days 1-7. Identify, score your top 10 relationships. Calculate total social energy score. When identify 3 cage builders and 1 potential cage breaker. Write down the exact words each cage builder uses that hold you back. Days 8-1-4. Create boundary build or unfollow 1 cage builder on social media. Use the boundary script with 1 family member. Answer: how's the business? You feel full for a moment, but your actions 25 is going up meant to a 1 meter pimaro develop day specific question dank, but 1 dask 30 vide about my vin. Project was ethical post 1 form or come action minute or bull pod to a original actor have your opponent first on so 1 go or more bronze one marketing art monthly social energy audit core tribe healthy check your annual environment redesign. Some relationships have seasoned some FML truth. You are the average truth. You proud. You are binal truth. You of the 5 people use time of the 5 people you spend time with after relationships seek a theme with a relationships time real tried of the Jim Rohn said this and it's true but incomplete. But you're also the average of the books you read, the podcasts you listen to, the accounts you follow, and the thoughts you think when you're alone. Your environment isn't just people. Ops inputs. Every input either expands your cage or helps you dismantle it. The people who achieve extraordinary things don't do it alone. They do it in extraordinary environments. Intentionally designed, ruthlessly protected, and constantly optimized. You built your cage unconsciously. Now you get to dismantle it consciously. Where the question is, will you spend the next 30 days redesigning your environment? Or will you spend another 30 days managing other people's anxiety when your dreams die? The clock is ticking. And your tribe is waiting. But not the one you have now. The one you're about to build. Ada, what if I told you the people who seem to predict the future, who spot trends before they're trendy, who invest in companies before they explode, who position themselves perfectly for what's coming, aren't psychic, aren't geniuses, and don't have insider information. All they simply know how to read patterns that are already there, hiding in plain sight. While you're drowning in information overload, they're connecting dots you didn't even know existed. While you're reacting to events, they're anticipating them. While you're asking, what happened? They're asking, what's next? Your brain is a pattern matching machine. It's scanning for patterns right now. The pattern of these words, the pattern of my voice, the pattern of meaning. But here's the problem, it's trained on the wrong patterns. Look, it's optimized for immediate threats, for social cues, for short-term survival. It's not trained for strategic pattern recognition. The ability to see the structural forces shaping your industry, your relationships, your life. But every major breakthrough in human history came from someone recognizing a pattern before it became obvious. Isaac Newton saw the pattern of gravity in a falling apple. Warren Buffett saw the pattern of durable competitive advantage in overlooked companies. And Steve Jobs saw the pattern of seamless design in chaotic technology markets. They weren't smarter than everyone else. They were pattern literate in a world of pattern illiterates. And by the end of this chapter, you'll have the mental equivalent of night vision goggles. You'll see the patterns that are invisible to your competition. You'll spot leading indicators while others chase lagging data. You'll connect dots across domains. Biology to business, physics to relationships, history to technology. And the insights that emerge will feel like cheating. But it's not cheating. It's just better thinking. The pattern bell edness epidem bucko. Why you're missing what's obviously what's your brain receives 11 million bits of information per second through your senses. But your conscious mind can only process about 50 bits per second. This means 95% of reality is filter you can even think about it. Your brain isn't showing you the world as it is. It's showing you a cartoon version, a simplified sketch based on the patterns it expects to see. And this is called perceptual filtering. And it's both your superpower and your prison. But habit keeps you from being overwhelmed by sensory chaos. But it also makes you pattern blind to anything your brain hasn't been trained to recognize. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. Meet Daniel, a marketing director who's trying to understand why his product launch failed. He has all the data, click-through rates, conversion funnels, customer surveys. But he can't see the pattern because his brain is filtering for marketing problems. Daniel's brain expects to see ad performance issues, pricing problems, or messaging misalignment, so that's what he finds. On Occur for high tweaks the ads, adjusts the price, rewrites the copy, but the product still doesn't sell, because the real pattern has nothing to do with marketing. That's a network effect problem. The product becomes valuable only when a critical mass of users adopt it simultaneously. But your Daniel's sequential launch strategy never hit that threshold, so a user found the product useless and churned. A pattern-literate marketer would have seen this immediately. They'd recognize the chicken and egg pattern that plagues marketplace businesses, social platforms, and collaboration tools. They'd know that traditional marketing metrics are lagging indicators of a much deeper structural issue. But Daniel's brain wasn't see that pattern. EB was trained to see funnels, not networks. This is the pattern blindness epidemic. We have more data than ever, but we still can't see what's right in front of us because we're looking for the wrong patterns. The expert's eye, how pattern recognition becomes automatic. Have you ever watched a master chess player review a game? They glance at the board for 3 seconds and say, "White's position is hopeless." To you, the board looks complex but balanced. To them, it's obvious. They've seen this pattern before, 1,000 times. A chess grandmasters don't calculate more moves than amateur players. And they don't have faster processors. They have pattern libraries, mental databases of 1,000 board positions, each associated with outcomes. When they see a board, their brain doesn't calculate. It recognizes, this is the Sicilian defense, Najorf variation, with a weak pawn structure on the queen side. They know what happens next because they've seen it happen before. The same principle applies to every domain. The radiologist who spots a tumor in a scan isn't reasoning from first principles. They're recognizing a pattern they've seen in 1,000 previous scans. The venture capitalist who passes on a sexy startup in 30 seconds isn't being arrogant. They're recognizing the coup to be true pattern that ends in fraud or failure 90% of the time. Pattern recognition is expertise in its purest form, and it's not magic. That's deliberate practice in disguise. Here's the neuroscience. When you repeatedly encounter a pattern and consciously label it, your brain creates what's called a neural chunk, a bundled representation of the pattern that can be accessed instantly without conscious processing. Think of it like saving a formula as a single function in Excel. Instead of recalculating every time, you just call the function. The good news, you can build neural chunks for any pattern you want to recognize. The bad news, it requires hundreds or thousands of repetitions. There's no shortcut. But there is a fast track. But the 4 pattern types that rule your LBA, every pattern you'll ever encounter falls into one of 4 categories. Master these, and you'll see the underlying structure of reality. A pattern type, cycle-bocal patterns, are things that repeat with predictable rhythm. Seasons, economic cycles, elections, your energy levels throughout the day, the hero's journey in storytelling, the product life cycle, introduction, growth, maturity. But how to spot ADEG? Look for historical dat repeats. ASCII. Has this happened before? How often? The stock market crash of 2008 looked unprecedented, but it followed the exact same pattern as 1929 in credit expansion, asset bubbles, panic, collapse. People who knew the pattern weren't surprised, but at your brain's mistaking, it treats each cycle as unique. This time it's different. That's not. The actors change, but the script remains the same. A pattern type 2, Gelbanier patterns, things that move in one direction with steady momentum. Aging. Skill acquisition at first, or a technology improvement, Moore's law. Accumulating debt, building a reputation. Compound interest, how to spot it? Look for consistent rate of change. Ask. Bass this growing at a steady pace. What happens if it continues? The person who starts investing at 25 doesn't just have more time than the person who's at 35. They have an exponential advantage because linear growth compounds. Your brain's mistaking vastly underestimates the endpoint of linear patterns. Well, you can't intuitively grasp that 8% a month invested at for 40 years, but $1 million, your brain thinks 500, 1200, x 40, 40, 12, 4, 2, and $4, and 1,000. I bet misses the compounding entirely. Pattern type 3, exponent Bale pattern, things that grow by multiplication, not addition. Viral spread, wealth and network effects, wealth accumulating for the top percent. Learning curves after the initial plan of technology adoption, fact smartphones, adev phones. How to spot it? Look for feedback loops. Ask, does each new user make the product more valuable for the next user? WS this growing faster over time. The first iPhone user got little value. The billionth phone user got massive value because of the app ecosystem created by the first 999,999. Your brain's mistake. It thinks exponential patterns are linear until they explode. A Kodak invented the digital camera but ignored it because film sales were still growing. They couldn't see that digital was on an exponential curve that would destroy linear film growth. By the time the exponential pattern became obvious, it was too late. You're a pattern type 40, complex adaptive patterns on things that unevolve actions with their environment. Markets, relationships, your career path, ecosystems, political movements. These patterns are emergent. They can't be predicted from the individual parts, only understood in retrospect. Ask how to spot it, look for adaptation and feedback. Ask how is this system responding to change? What feedback loops are operating? A marriage is a complex adaptive pattern. You can't predict its success from individual traits. Success emerges from the interaction patterns between two people. Avekara, your brain's mistaking AdPat tries to control complex adaptive patterns with simple rules. Ebibe, just follow this 5-step plan, my career will succeed. Careers aren't linear, they're emergent. You need to navigate, not control. Amoka on the Tronebor on the pattern recognition drain dang. Your brainly done recognition isn't a talent you have or don't have. That's a muscle you build. Here's your daily training call, Exerc BC1G10, the pattern journal, 10 minutes daily every evening. Write down 3 patterns you noticed that day. Patterns. Not my boss was in a bad mood. But my boss's mood follows a weekly cycle, worst on Monday mornings after Sunday night emails. Not, the market crashed. But this crash follows the same pattern as 2008 credit tightening preceded by 6 months. The key is specificity. Name the pattern type: cyclical, linear, exponential, complex. Describe the structure, predict what happens next. Then check your prediction later. This is how you build your pattern library. Exerc Basi 2Ju, the 20 example rule to recognize a pattern. You need to see it at least 20 times. A market a want to spot and bubble. Patterns. Study 20 historical bubbles. Want to recognize toxic relationship. Patterns. Study 20 case studies. Want to see successful product launch. Patterns. Analyze 20 launches. Your brain needs repetition to build the neural chunk. 1A. Reading about bubbles won't do it. Studying GIL 20 in detail will. Exerc a 3D cross Dama theft every week. Find a pattern in one domain and apply it to another. See a pattern in nature. How does it apply to business? Notice a pattern in your relationship. How does it apply to your career? The most powerful insights come from cross-domain pattern transfer. Example: the pattern of antifragility, getting stronger under stress, appears in biology, immune systems, economics, startups, and personal development learning. Once you recognize it in one domain, you see it everywhere. Bank band Exerc beats 4 is forward the lead indicator. Hunt for any outcome you care about. Find the leading indicator, the thing that happens first. For your health, leading indicators might be sleep quality, resting heart rate, or daily steps. For your business, leading indicators might be demo email open rates or customer support tickets. Lagging indicators are revenue, weight, churn rate. By the time these change, but the pattern is over. Leading indicators let you see it emerging. A bit of Leah every day. Write down 3 leading indicators for your most important goals. Track them. Watch for pattern changes. When a leading indicator shifts, you have time to act before the lagging indicator reveals the problem. Wanibon the cross, Domabon the pattern wheel bearing, stealing from every discipline. The best pattern recognizers are intellectual thieves. They steal patterns from biology, physics, history, engineering, and apply them to business, relationships, and personal growth. Or am I pattern evaluate honorary select biology, or bioorganisms adapt through variation and selection. The most adapted survive. This same pattern appears in markets. Companies create variations, new products, markets select, customers choose, the fit survive. And 8, how do you apply? Stop trying to create the perfect product. Create 10 variations, let the market select, double down on what survives. This is the pattern behind ALB testing, MIAP launches, and pivoting. Fluidity are pattern feedback loops. Engineering, a thermostat senses temperature, compares it to a target, and activates heating or cooling. The act in this same pattern appears in business, aka dashboards trigger actions. Relationship feel disconnected. Let me schedule date night. And habits, streak tracking reinforces behavior. How to applying for any system you want to control. Identify the feedback loop. What's being measured? What's being adjusted? Ask the loop. Positive reinforcing growth or negative correcting errors. Most personal and business failures come from broken or missing feedback loops. Pattern phase trans ban-ons in physics. Water molecules move faster as they heat up, but temperature increases linearly while energy increases exponentially. The phase transition from liquid to gas happens suddenly at 100 ek. Or this pattern appears in technology adoption. Slow, then suddenly ubiquitous. Social movements ignored, then viraled, and personal breakthroughs. Struggling, then suddenly effortless. But how to apply when you're in the slow progress? Don't quit. The phase transition is coming. Keep adding energy. The moment before breakthrough feels exactly like the moment before failure. You can't tell the difference except in retrospect. A pattern redundancy aviation. Planes have backup systems for critical functions because failure is catastrophic. This pattern appears in resilient businesses, multiple revenue streams, in anti-fragile careers, diverse skills, and in strong relationships, multiple support sources. How to apply? Identify single points of failure in your life. If you lost your job tomorrow, what else do you have? If your relationship ended, where else do you get support? Build backups before you need them. A pattern metabolic rate by biology. Small animals fast metabolisms, live fast, die young. Large animals have slow metabolisms, live slow, live long. This pattern appears in business. Startups are metabolically fast, iterate daily, die quickly. Corporations are metabolically slow, iterate quarterly, survive for decades. It appears in projects, so sprints vs marathons. How to apply match your metabolic rate to your goal. Want to learn fast? Want to work in sprints with feedback? Want to build something permanent? Slow down and build deep foundations. Most people fail by using the wrong metabolic rate for their objective, aka the lead BNB indicator framework. Predicting without being a prophet, the holy grail of pattern recognition is seeing the future. You can't do that, but you can see leading indicators. The tiny signals that predict what's coming. What are the frameworking step lend dent bentify your lag being ban and bacator, or what outcome are you trying to predict? Revenue, health, relationship quality. This is your lagging indicator. The thing that tells you what already happened, but and the step 2 of a lead ben indicator, or what happens 36 months before your lagging indicator changes. Lagami or businessness customer complaints leap ligging, a healthing, sleep predicts illness. Lagging relationships quality time meant predicts breakup lagging. A career new skills learned, leading predicts promotion lagging. Step 30 track relentlessly. A measure your leading indicator daily or weekly. Create a dashboard. Watch for inflection points. A step 4 act on benfleck bayon when your leading indicator moves. You have a window to act before the lagging indicator reflects the change. This is where you get your advantage. But example, the employee turnover pattern. A tech company was puzzled by sudden engineer departures. Exit interviews showed better opportunities. But that was the lagging indicator. The leading indicator was meeting attendance. 3 months before resigning, engineers stopped attending optional meetings. They'd mentally checked out. By tracking meeting attendance, her could predict who was likely to leave and intervene early. Example, the health pattern. Your weight is a lagging indicator. That reflects months of behavior. What your daily energy level is a leading indicator. When you wake up exhausted for 3 days in a row, weight gain is coming if you don't adjust. Track energy, not weight. Example, the market pattern. Revenue is a lagging indicator. By the time it drops, you've been losing customers for months. When an or support ticket is a leading indicator. When tickets spike, satisfaction is dropping. When tickets drop suddenly because angry customers stop complaining and just leave, churn is imminent. The pattern vol babadat beyond protocol avoidnia apophenia is seeing patterns in randomness. That's why people see faces in clouds and find conspiracy theories and coincidences. Pattern recognition without validation is just delusional thinking. Here's how to validate that your pattern is real. Test 11 predbusi beeve accuracy. Use your pattern to make 10 specific predictions. If you're right 70 times, you might have a real pattern. If you're right less than 5 times, you're seeing ghosts. A test 2 cross val bad dap on. And does your pattern appear in multi-dependent datasets? The market bubble. Pattern appears in stocks, real estate, tulips, and crypto. Of your pattern, that's cross-validation. If your pattern only appears in one context, it's probably context-specific, not universal. A test 3 mechanism bed of dat von. Can you explain why the pattern exists? Why are out a pattern? If you see a pattern but can identify the underlying mechanism causing it, you're probably fooling yourself. Real patterns have causal mechanisms. Test 4G falls of Bagabal Bonti. What evidence would prove your pattern wrong? If you can't answer, you're in belief territory, not pattern territory. Real patterns can be disproven. A test 5 base rate check. How often does this pattern actually occur? Most people who feel chest pain aren't having heart attacks. Most business ideas that feel brilliant fail. Your pattern must beat the base rate to be useful. The 30-day pattern recontra nug. Here's your systematic protocol to become literate in the next month. Week 1 found at bar on. Daily identify 3 cyclical patterns in your life: sleep, energy, mood, productivity. Track them on a simple graph. Notice the rhythms. A week 2 expands bond daily. Find 1 linear pattern: skill improvement, savings growth, relationship depth. Project it forward 6 months. Notice your brain's resistance to linear extrapolation. You a week 3 accelerate bowen on daily hunt for exponential patterns in your environment, social media engagement, email list growth, network expansion. Track the rate of change, not just the absolute numbers. Wama week 4 fu complex bodhi, a daily 1 complex adaptive system you interact with your team, your family, your market. You identify the feedback loops. Notice how small changes create big, unpredictable effects. An ongo bun gate day pattern journal 3 patterns per day. A weekly pattern review, which predictions were accurate. A monthly pattern library edition, 1 new cross-domain pattern. After 30 days, you'll notice something unsettling. You'll start seeing patterns everywhere, but you'll predict outcomes that surprise others. You'll make decisions but seem risky, feel inevitable to you. You won't be psychic. You'll be pattern literate, and that's better. And the case studying how pattern recognition built a billion-dollar company. Let me show you pattern recognition in action. Who meet Lisa, who at one point tech company by recognizing a pattern everyone else missed. A pattern spotting on 2014. Lisa noticed that small business owners were using personal Venmo accounts for business transactions. She saw this in 20 different industries. Landscapers, caterers, personal trainers, or a cyclical patterner. Every 35 was doing this. Every business owner over 50 wasn't. A pattern type E exponential adoption curve at younger users were early indicators pred BC to P no business payments would move to mobile, just like personal payments had. At a bod bugn Lebanon obcator the Venmo for business. Google searches was doubling every month. Tiny numbers but exponential growth. Across Doma bond transfer Lisa recognized unbundling. Pattern from media's Craigslist, a Uber, Airbnb, Tinder. OIR a personal was being unbundled into use case specific platforms. Evolved by Debong, she made 100 predictions about the space. 78 came true. Pattern was real. Bong, she built a Venmo for business platform with bookkeeping built in. Everyone said, businesses will never trust mobile payments. She knew they'd already. 5 years later, her company processed $40 in payments and sold for 1v12b. Lisa's advantage wasn't capital, connections, or code. That was pattern recognition. She saw what was already happening before it was statistically significant. On her own, she trusted the pattern over the conventional wisdom. The banal Ben's Bach patterns are free, but seeing them as priceless. The patterns that will shape your future are all around you right now. They're in the conversations you're overhearing, the trends you're browsing past, the problems you're complaining about. You don't need more information. You need better pattern recognition. Your brain is already scanning for patterns. Necabat's just scanning for the wrong ones. Threats, social cues, immediate gratification. You need to retrain your scanner. The 30-day protocol will do that. But the real secret is curiosity. Pattern recognizers are obsessively curious. They ask 5 times. They read outside their field, but they collect examples like stamps. They cross-pollinate mercilessly. The world isn't random. It's patterned. And once you see the patterns, you can't unsee them. The future stops feeling uncertain and starts feeling inevitable. Econom not because you can predict it, but because you can read the signals that predict it. The question is, will you spend the next 30 days building your pattern library? Or will you spend another month reacting to events you could have anticipated? The patterns are already there. All you have to do is learn to see them.